All right. What does it sound like in there? Let me check it out. Still relatively peaceful. What's going on over here in the chat? Okay. I'm just letting people trickle in here. We'll get started in a bit. Lots of interesting conversation about the editor thing. You guys all have some really great ideas there. Thanks for contributing to your ideas to the chat. This is fantastic. I mean, this is what it's about, right? Yeah. Now everything is on fire. I don't think it's funny because you guys, as I was noticing, Bit was noticing it's pretty tame in there. I imagine it's because they've all heard a lot of people have heard my opinions on this already, and so they don't particularly need to hear them again. I really felt like it was important for me to summarize them really quickly and in a particularly small video that I can refer to, because I am tired of answering that question, and I just want to say, go watch this video. This is my feeling on this. The thing about NeoVim is probably one of the hardest ones for me to talk about rationally, and I did get a little hot under the collar, but whatever. It's fine. If you're beginning, that's the main thing. If you're just starting out with the whole editor thing, since we just came off that video, and we'll get started here in a bit, is because so many people don't think about those things going into it, and so they get blindsided by this like flood of opinions from people, some of whom have their best, I don't know, that some of them have they're trying to help them, and other people who aren't. They just want to flex and show how awesome they are. And I just want you to be your own person at the end of the day. Opinionated opinions. Yeah, that's really what it is. And if you can't tell, if you watch streams of me last December versus now, I believe I've made a lot of progress on that front. I'm more of a make your own decisions kind of guy at this point. Even though, and as somebody mentioned, I've seen the dark side. I've seen it. I've seen what the dark side can do to people, and I've seen it mess people up. Yeah, I did. And for the record, I don't not like Rust right now, by the way. I just don't think it's useful for most things. Yeah. So, yeah. Were you the one, Sarian? Yeah. So, because Rust is, I mean, look, when you see people struggle, and I've worked with a lot of beginners, or you see interns who don't know how to operate on computers at all because they've learned VS Code and now they want to be a Linux intern for some reason. That's frustrating. It's frustrating. And so it's like, you could have avoided this if somebody had kind of brought you into this a different way, at least had given you the different options from the beginning and talked it over with you and let you make a better, more informed decision. But when you're getting bludgeoned to death, like Rust is the coolest language, everybody should code in Rust right now. And I'm going to learn Rust as my first language. That's the kind of thinking. And I'm not attacking Rust right there. I'm just saying that it's more this mentality that I know better than you, and that you should listen to me. And frankly, watching myself on these videos has really taught me a lot about myself, because I've learned that I can come off that way, and so that's one of my my personal goals for the coming year is to be less of that guy and be more like, here's why. My own code of conduct says don't start with conclusions. Which is like Rust sucks, right? That would be a conclusion. Well, say why. It doesn't just suck, by the way. It's like Rust sucks for day-to-day, whatever. And then qualify it, and give your explanation. Because that's how we end up fighting. And 2020 has been, if nothing, more. We had the dumpster fire on earlier, and it was like, it's the year of fighting. Nobody really understands each other, and they're just going like this and just talk. And if we if we actually pulled everything apart and maybe understood each other a bit better, it would be better. And that goes for tech. So as well as, the more serious issues, unfortunately. All right, Mark. In fact, I'm actually going to type Mark right here. Twitch, Mark. I love doing that because it puts a little mark in it. Russia loves this. All right, so I have some news for you guys. So if this is, I've done learning web design before. I love web design. It's how I got into tech. From one of my main areas. I see a bunch of people in the chat. So I'm saying hello to them right now. And a lot of people are returning to this stream, which I have every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from midnight to 4 a.m. And but why do you care? We're going to be doing learning web design, but I have to say something here, and it's going to cause a few of you to probably want to leave. And I'm just going to go ahead and I don't know if I'm going to cut that right now or not, but anyone who's been watching any of my streams up to now and who's already invested the time in the learning web design, I'm going to do something differently. And I've actually decided to start the book over. Yeah, I was reading my other videos and I realized that they're completely unusable because they're full of chat, some of which is inappropriate. Sometimes I'm swearing. We're just being a community, and that's fine. But it's not fine if I'm going to put a video on Vimeo and I'm going to chop it up and everything. I need to be more succinct, and I need to limit the chat to a specific time, and I need to let everybody in the chat know that they're going to be recorded, and that a lot of people don't know when they come in here, and that they're going to be recorded, and so they like to play around, and they don't know things like this is for beginners, and I encourage beginners to be given a voice above the people who know this stuff already. It's really fun to look. God knows I promoted the environment of having fun and bantering and all that stuff. So sometimes people come in here when I'm doing one of these on a beginner boost day and they don't fully understand. And I actually had to call them on it last night, and I hope I didn't anger anyone. I was a little frustrated because I was trying to help the beginners. I was speaking to them, and my some of my best friends in the stream here are like having fun with me, and I'm like, this is not the time for that. Let's I like having fun. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to have other people feel offended or feel like they can't talk because they're not good enough. So here it is midnight right now. Right. So as we go into this stream, this restart of learning web design, I want to put a few things out there, and I'm going to actually put a mark right here. So from now on, from as soon as I say set this mark, I'm going to be behaving as if this is the beginning of the stream that's going to go up on Vimeo eventually. Okay. You're welcome. My studio audience, I love you. Thank you for coming. You're always welcome. Advanced, grandpas and babies, they say, whatever, right? You're all welcome, but I want to okay, I'm going to start it now. Hey, how's it going? Okay. So, I've already done one of these learning web design videos, series, but I'm going to start over. And the reason I'm going to start over now is because I want to set forth some guidelines for this as we go into it. It's been largely an experiment, a wonderful experiment to do these courses with a very live studio audience. Some people think I'm crazy. They're like, what are you doing? Why would you ever allow live chatters to, people chatting to be able to be on your stream and potentially screw up your video series? And I don't care, because I wanted to feel like, you guys are in the learning lab with me, whether you have experience or you don't have experience. But as we go into this series and we start on day 1 of learning web design, I want to set forth some rules as we go. So the first rule is, if you're a beginner, you have priority. That means there's going to be a lot of people in the chat. More and more people have been finding the boosts again, and we're getting, the numbers are coming up, and it's more important that beginners have a voice. So beginners win here. These Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from midnight to 4 is beginner time. Beginners have priority. They should be the ones chatting. They should not feel intimidated by all the experience and people who might make fun of them. That they should never fear. But they don't. It's their time. So I'm just asking my more advanced, amazing community members to just zip it as much as possible and let them have a dialogue. If you have something to provide as insight to them, rather than flexing about how awesome you are, that's totally cool. But please, avoid the flexing and back road, banter. Let's just kind of hold off on that during this. This is going to be saved for time and all eternity, on Vimeo. So that's the other thing I want to let everybody know. By participating in this chat, you agree to have your ideas and your writings and your words be saved forever. And I'm going to be editing those out. So it just helps me. All right. The second rule that I'm going to make, the second rule I'm going to make is why is important to state that I'm not going to be looking at the chat all the time. And that's really important that I do that, because if I look at the chat too much, it can become distracting. I've thought about having the chat completely off the screen completely, and I probably won't do that. But what I do want to do is I want to be able to focus on the coding and the conversation, and then on the chat, and then we'll have a moment of chat. I realize I'm at risk of doing dumb things like forgetting to turn my mic on or something, and not knowing about it because you're not telling me. But so, and everything I'm doing is also being recorded, so that we can pull that down. Other than that, I think this will help us get through this a little bit faster. Another thing I think is really important too is when people are fast forwarding through the stream, I want them to know where the sections for chat and discussion are taking place, so that they can skip those if they want, or they can cut them out if they want. And they don't have to be bogged down by frequent chat interference as we go through the material. I realize that means that the way that I'm presenting the material is going to be very biased in my, based on my experience. And frankly, sometimes it might even be wrong as I go forward. And I'm not claiming to be the authority on everything here. And you're not going to be able to catch me on things. You're going to have to tell me in the chat after the fact. So if you have a number of things that I've said that you think are wrong, you want to challenge me on, that's fine. I encourage you to do that. But let's save it up for the chat. So I'll try to break it up into amount of time of conversation about what we're covering in the chapter. And then we'll have a chat session. And if you're not particularly interested in the chat, that can be the time that you go get your drink, or you go take a break, and then you come back and we'll be doing it again. And I'm going to try to keep, as much as possible, I'm going to try to keep it down to 10, 20 minutes at a time of presentation. All right. I know it's a rather lengthy explanation, but I think that that's the way that we should go about doing this. Okay. Yep. All right. Also, we're going to keep I want to keep the priority on learning web design. There's lots of other topics about that. And I tend to go down rabbit holes. I'm going to really try hard not to. God knows I will, but I like teaching with stories, so there'll be a story or two for sure. All right, so let's just jump into it. I'm going to go ahead and limit the chat right now. I don't see anything in the chat really that I need to read right now, but I am reading it. Okay. And you guys are welcome to chat when I've got you off. If you want to have a discussion behind my back, that's fine. But I'm not going to have it on the screen as all. I'm also going to not be using the really fun backgrounds that I have because those backgrounds tend to distract and they're not seasonal. And I wanted to have this. I know it's going to make it a little bit more boring, but it will definitely be more readable. All right, so let's go into it. Where are we? There we go. All right, so welcome to the terminal. This is Groovebox, and this is a lot of fun. We're not going to talk about the terminal anymore today, other than to know that it exists. This is not the main goal of this particular series. So first of all, let me talk about what a work-through is. A work-through is when we can watch some fish while we're doing this. So, oh wow, the fish are kind of messed up today. Well, so let me just fix some stuff here. There we go. I'll put some fish on. And let's see, fish. Yeah, we'll just put some fish on for a bit. So what is a work-through? A work-through is when you work through the book together. And so that's what a work-through is. I don't know if that's an original word. That's what I mean by that. And I have to talk about that for a second. This is the first work-through that I've done in the beginner boost. So it's the first time you're going to see a book involved, and you might ask the question, well, why am I using a book? And I want to go ahead and talk about that for a second. We still have people on there. I guess I can't go down to you guys can still have an occasional comment down there. So when we're talking about a book, we're talking about a resource that is available that is comprehensive. You can go from the beginning to the end of the book, and You have the same author, you have the same voice. It's just really clear to understand. I've talked about this in the Autodidactic Habits of Successful Technologists series, which is a previous series. And so that's the thing. I can't watch those guys. They freak me out. My fish freak me out. So I'm gonna have to redo that. And let me also do something else here. So I'm gonna do this. All right. So how about T Matrix? Should we do that one? I wonder what it looks like in. Ooh, it's like red. Yeah, that really is distracting. I don't know if I want to do that right now. All right. So let's go back to the title again. So let's talk about books again. So a book is a comprehensive resource. It's the beginning to the end. It has the same author throughout the whole thing. It's focused on a particular audience. So it's written for, whoever is involved in the target. And that's really important. I've talked about why books are better than wikis or better than Udemy or better than this and that, because all of those other things, as useful as they are, they've got weaknesses. So I still believe a book is the best way to go through something, even though I think that the primary bad part about a book, and you're going to see this immediately today, is that books are really quickly out of date. There's a lot of really serious stuff that's out of date in this PDF. And sort of as a gesture of good faith and thanks to Jennifer who wrote this book, I plan on sending a PDF with annotations back on every single thing that perhaps she can use to help update the book. That I know she has been pursuing publishing this for some time, and she's very responsive on Twitter. And so what am I talking about? What book am I talking about? Well, the title of the book is Learning Web Design, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into that. This is a for-profit book. You're supposed to buy it. I have 3 copies, and an older one, a newer one, and then a Kindle one. So I also don't mind using the PDF that you can get on the internet. Now, I mean, you can get anything on the internet, right? There's a good chance if you don't have access to this book, that I'm going to go right to the top page really quick here. In fact, I might as well go ahead and do full screen now. Let's do full screen. All right, so let's go all the way to the top. So this book has been inverted, and I will be inverting it for most of the time that we're doing this, because it's kind of hard on the eyes if you don't do that. But I'm going to turn it off for now. So this is the book we're doing, Learning Web Design. It's a phenomenal book. This has been the standard for learning web design, which is HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, along with image theory and web image and just design concepts. This is really the #1 resource still used in colleges today. It was made originally some time ago. Jennifer's been around since the beginning of the internet. I have a feeling we're close to the same age. And it's a phenomenal resource. Jennifer actually says here, whether you're a beginner or bringing your skills to up to date, this book can give you a solid footing in modern web production. I teach this topic visually at a pleasant pace with frequent exercises to let you try out your new skills. Reading it feels like sitting in my classroom. And it really does. I would have to say, like any book, that this book has become, in certain particular areas, very out of date. However, in other certain key areas, it is maintained, it's been kept up. So Flexbox is covered, CSS Grid is covered. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. But that is really important going into this. So this is the book we're going to be learning from. This is the book we're going to be walking through. For copyright reasons, obviously, I'm not going to be reading you every letter of the word of the book. I do encourage you to acquire your own copy legally. You can probably get them through you can rent them. You can get libraries. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a library and this book is still there. You can go to most universities have a program where they have a digital program. Most computers have a training system that you can share. There's just lots of ways to get this book. If you can't pay the 30, 40 American dollars US that requires, I'm not here to tell you how to get the book. I'm just here to say this is the book that you should use. And I immediately want to address a bunch of questions that come up with the selection of this particular resource for learning HTML and CSS primarily, and a little bit of JavaScript. The number one complaint I get, and a complaint or whatever you want to call it, is that learning web design is besides being out of date, they say, well, why don't I use X and such online resource? And I've been really trying to rethink how I present my opinion of the online resources that are out there, particularly for these videos. If you catch me off guard on a live stream when I'm not doing it, you'll hear my actual opinion about them, and it's pretty harsh. There's a few resources out there. I'm not going to name names right now, not in this video anyway, that I absolutely despise and don't think they should exist, and I think everybody should run screaming from them. And that's not what this video is about. So this video is about this book, and it's about going through this book. And the only thing you need to know about that is that I believe this is the best resource, and that's all. And you can, if in the chat, you're probably going to want to ask me about my opinion on several other things, and I might, entertain a response to specific questions about other resources that are out there than this one. But if you want my opinion on what you should do, and everybody asks which book should I read first to do this stuff, this is it. You don't really need more than that. Well, what about, right? Well, let's save that for the chat. I don't want to do that right now because I want to distract. Okay, so this is a beginner's guide. And so one of the biggest reasons to use this is it does actually cover web graphics. There's a big section on web graphics. This is not the book for JavaScript. We will not be using the JavaScript book. The book for JavaScript that I will be using after this, we're in a Pandoc series after this, and then JavaScript after that. The book I'll be using for beginners is called The JavaScript Way. So you can just know that that's coming, and we're going to get into it. All right, so I am going to try. I'm going to have to go back to night mode here. We're going to go blind. I mean, it is pretty bad. I won't lie. And let's just go down here. You can't actually use page down here, which is one of the annoying things too. That's kind of bothered me that I can't do page down. Learning web design, 5th edition. Okay, it's a beginner's guide. It takes you through, what it's for. So if you're wondering why you're here, if you're here, that means you already have some idea about what you want to do with your life. You want to learn at least HTML and CSS. You want to be able to make your own web page. You want to be able to use style sheets for color and learn basics of JavaScript. And you want to make web images that work, that are a thing. And you want to make websites that people will use and that don't exclude anyone. And that she talks about it in the first chapter. I'm looking forward to it. Jennifer Robbins has 25 years of experience, and she's been writing since 1993. Network Navigator, was that in 1983? Yeah, I guess it was. I guess that's when I got into it too then. Yeah, O'Reilly's Web Design in a Nutshell. Man, was it 92? That's been a long time. As I said, it's not a cheap book. So, it's because it's got a lot of graphics in it. 5th edition. Make sure you get 5th edition. There might be, I don't know if there's a 6th edition coming out, but there probably will be. Let's see. Copyright 2008. So this is a copyrighted work. Just know that. This is the reason that I'm just scanning through it and not really reading it. Because I think if I were to read the whole thing, I think that would be a really clear violation. I want you to, use the book. So, let's get into it. So this book, let's go down to this book is broken down into, 5, 6 parts. Part 2 is usually where I jump ahead to and start, but I'm glad that on this video series, that we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about everything in part 1, and some of you are going to be really bored and you're going to be like, why are we talking about this? And I want you to pay attention and give me a chance, because the stuff that's in part 1, I believe, is the most important content that is left out of every other place to go to learn web design. And it is so important that you learn this. If you don't do this, we're literally facing the demise of the web because of it. And I'm going to talk about that at length a lot. I've already talked about it. These guys have heard it already, but we're going to talk about that. All right. So we're reading through part 1. So part 1 is kind of the getting ready. What is web design? Why it matters. And part 2 is where we really, really jump in and, get into making a page. And that she mentions how to use the editor, and we'll refer to all that as we go. All right. And then what? And then we have links, images, markup, and, forms, media, how to put videos on your page, Canvas, which is how HTML5 games are made. Then we have part 3, which is CSS. If you look at the book from the side, the CSS section is the thickest section. And that's because it's the biggest part of design. This is probably the part that we're going to go through the most quickly. I mean, she's a designer and she's teaching beginning designers, and designers have to really, when you understand what CSS is, that it's the style, it's the actual presentation of the content, then you understand why the book is so thick on the CSS, because that's where all the style and design are done. The rest is just content, and behavior is the JavaScript. So the book says learning web design. So therefore, it's fair to say that it's going to be heavy on CSS, which is the language for that. We're going to talk about how the web is 3 languages later. Colors and backgrounds, important. Tinkering inside the box, floating in position, fancy text wrap. Some of this stuff's going to be a reminder for me every time. I don't, go through the whole thing with people. Usually I let them go through it. This is what I'm really happy that's here. I wouldn't even cover this if this wasn't in here. So CSS layout and Flexbox and grid, these are so important today. And we're going to talk about that, but don't look at any resource out there that doesn't cover that. If it doesn't cover Flexbox and grid, it's not worth looking at. Responsive web design is just web design today. We'll talk about that. Transitions, animation, super fun. Maybe get our blink tag back. It's an inside joke. Modern web development tools. Get cozy with the command line. And we'll talk about that. But I think it's funny that that's like chapter 20, rather than it's like at the end. JavaScript for behavior. We will cover this, but as you can see, there's only 2 chapters in it. And it's very lightweight. Yeah, Jennifer is very open. She actually suggests you get Ethan's Learning JavaScript book, which is a good book, but it's not my first choice. I would do the ones I've already mentioned, and we'll talk about JavaScript books when we get to that. Web images. This is another reason to get this book. Okay, so a lot of people, when they go into web development, or they check all the boxes on HTML and CSS, but they have no idea what it's the difference between a raster and a vector image, or what a web, what a color palette is, a web color palette. These are design questions that a lot of technologists think are just a bother. But if you are going to put something on the web for any reason, and you just kind of assume that you know how to do that for almost any tech job these days, you might as well know the difference. You might as well know how to do those things. And image asset production, saving images in formats, working with transparency. There's a lot here, so we'll see how fast we can get through it. And then it has the appendices. I don't think you should go to this particular appendix. If you had nothing but the paper book to look at, that would make sense. But we're going to talk about WhatWG as a resource for looking things up. In addition to other resources. That's my primary resource. That literally is the manual. So it's not somebody's idea of what the manual should be and how it should be used. It's the manual that is used for all web browsers when they implement things. And we're going to go straight to the manual. And it says here from HTML plus to HTML5. That's kind of an old topic, but we'll talk about that. All right. I'm going to read forward from Jen Simmons. If you travel to Silicon Valley between global headquarters, you can head to the Computer History Museum, wander through the museum, blah, blah, blah. Internet in a box, learning web design. I am constantly asked, what are the best resources for learning web technology? I learned by reading books. Blog posts are great, but you need an in-depth, comprehensive book look at the subject. Couldn't agree more. She said it almost exactly the way that I would say it. In the beginning, all books were beginner books, teaching HTML URLs and how to use a browser. When CSS came along, the books assumed you already knew HTML and taught you how to change to new techniques. Then CSS3 came along and taught us how to add new CSS properties, blah, blah, blah. There were always books for beginners, but they were super basic. And they never touched on professional techniques for aspiring professionals. And this is the number one reason to use this book as your primary resource. If you're an aspiring professional, which I'm assuming you are if you're here, then you want to learn from professionals, and you don't want to just get, just the HTML stuff. You want to learn the stuff that a professional is going to tell you that's not covered. So there's a lot of industry knowledge in this book that you're not going to get on the other places you can go. And so, I look, I have nothing to do with this book other than the fact that I bought it and I like it. I'm not making any money. I don't have a special Amazon place for you to go buy it and I get a credit. It'd be cool if I did that, but I don't have that. So this is it. Designer and developer advocate at Mozilla. I don't know if I imagine she still is. Jen is still over at Mozilla. Even after all the layoffs, I imagine she is. Mozilla is an organization that gives us Firefox, and there's been a lot of good things happen over there. I, however, have my own, I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole about what I think of Mozilla and Firefox right now. I use Firefox as my main browser, mostly because it's the default. But as we get into this, I will be using Chrome web browser for reasons I'll talk about later. Welcome to the 5th edition. So I'm pretty sure she's going to tell us that this covers Flexbox and Grid. Some techniques are brand new, experimental. Last edition, HTML5 is the new normal. That's a really important phrase right there. And we're talking about what that means. We've gotten our heads around designing for seamless, infinite range of devices. Responsive is now the de facto. In fact, I'm kind of surprised she put responsive design in here. RWD is now just web design. Earned its own chapter as a result. Yeah, these days though, we've moved so far beyond. Responsive web design has become so inherent in web design that people don't even say it anymore. They just say it's just web design. It's assumed that you're going to do responsive web design, but it's being called out. Responsive web design, by the way, just means that you're making a product on the web that can be viewed from any device, anywhere, anytime, and no matter what size it is, whether it's from a watch to a refrigerator panel to a car, screen to a phone, it always looks good. That's responsive web design. A lot of sites and ships in the web over the years. Boy, me too. I'm glad she's going to mention this though. Flexbox and Grid are fundamentally changing the way we approach design. This is why this is so important. If you are looking at a resource that's not this, and if it doesn't cover Flexbox and Grid, run screaming, because those are the most important new innovations in the CSS front that have ever. In fact, they completely have replaced important movements in the industry for things like Foundation and Bootstrap for laying out your web page, and that's what that's about. Let's keep going, but I'm glad she mentioned that. Let's see. I'm trying to skim here. I encourage you, if you got it, to take the time to read it all, but I don't feel like it's right for me to just read it. Old standard GIFs. GIF is on the brink of retirement. That's not true at all. This is not true. No, I'm going to actually put I'm going to say, no, it's not. You're going to have to watch me do this a little bit. So, and I'm going to highlight the selection. Wait, where did my thing go? Okay, here we go. No, it very much is not. In fact, if anything, GIFs are on the rise right now because of memes, because of icons, lots of other things. GIFs are like exploding on the internet, and that saying that they're being retired is a mistake. That's not right. PNG is definitely the default, but PNGs are not animated, and animation is still a thing. WebP is not a thing. We're going to talk about that. I'm kind of getting sucked into that. SVG is a big thing. In the first 4 editions, the book addresses needs of designers. So this is written for designers, but if you're working with HTML and CSS, you need to think like a designer. Even if you don't think you're an artist or a designer, you need to think about that. How this book is organized. We're going to take after we finish the preface, I'll take a break for chat. How this book is organized. Learning is organized into getting started, HTML, we already did this, CSS, JavaScript, web images, and the appendices. We talked about that already. Topical conventions, we don't care. Acknowledgements, lots of fantastic people. By the way, some of these people, you might want to stalk them on Twitter, and find them and learn from them, because there's a lot of really good people here that you might want to learn from. Jen Simmons is another one. And yeah, just great people. Chris Coyier is one of my favorite humans to watch. He's behind CodePen.io and a bunch of things we'll talk about. Anyway, it's good to notice that list. We talked about that in the Autodidactic Habits series, and one of those habits is finding key influencers, not just influencers, but I don't like that word. It's been, it makes me think of Kim Kardashian, and that's not what it's about. It's about people who actually, have something to say in the industry, and follow these people. And if you want to listen to Kim Kardashian or whoever, fine, make a list for these people on Twitter so that you can click on that list and you can see what they have to say and see what's changing and what's on their mind, because doing that is going to keep you prescient, which means I call it a prescient technology professional. You can see the wave cresting and you can see it coming. You know that CSS Grid is reaching mainstream status because these people are talking about it. They're debating. They're writing big, huge blogs about the debate between CSS and JavaScript web, and all that. So I don't want to skim through that too fast because that's a good list of people to go. You might want to go add to a list. And she says she wants to thank her development team at O'Reilly. Good people over at O'Reilly. Began designing in 1993. Blah, blah, blah. Web design in a nutshell. Yeah, back then everything was in a nutshell. I think there's still a lot of stuff in a nutshell these days. Oh, wow. It's got comments and questions. I did notice that there is an errata. There it is. We list the errata examples. You can go here if you think that there's something that's not right. I found that when you're dealing with a book, that's a really important thing. You got to know where to go for those errors. Head4C has a number of errors at the beginning that can really throw you off if you don't know where to go for the errata. So please make sure you have that on standby if you need it. But most of the errata that we run into today, I'll be able to help you through. Getting started. So here we go. We're getting ready to start on chapter 1. So I'm gonna take a break here. I'm gonna put a mark, and then I'm gonna go watch the chat. I wonder if I can I have more than one mark with the same name? I don't know. We'll see, huh? We'll see. All right. So what do you guys got to say? Oh, it's true. We see a lot of candidates who took a code bootcamp because they want a career switch, but that's about it. While that's admirable, it also doesn't tell me much other than that. Yeah. Where can we find this? I've been trying to look for a job for a while. Maybe you can mock interview me to see my weakness. Yeah. What about NBN? I thought that one was coming up. I knew that one was coming up. This is the author, Jen. Oh, great for finding her. Great. Good job. I can do that. I'll drop you a whisper aware of how useless I am. Before responsive, we used to keep 2 sets of code and serve desktop and mobile browsers different views. This is true. Yes, this is true. Memes, the most important aspect of web dev. He is going to be so disappointed with breaking for chat. Lol. Why? Because there's nobody in the chat. I'm not going to read anything older than that. Now is your time to ask a question if you have any questions. So the only significant question I'm reading right now is what about MDN? So MDN is the Microsoft Developer Network. I'm sorry, the Mozilla Developer Network. It's also the Microsoft Developer Network. The Mozilla Developer Network, which is a wiki, for the most part, it's been really great. Its downside is that it is a wiki, and for that reason, it is subject to all the failures of wikis. It can be wrong. It can be more about people flexing and fighting about who gets to win with their edit than a real thing. It's a lot of times it's got irrelevant stuff in it that you really don't care about. In my mind, wikis are kind of a stepping stone to a better system, which I'm working frantically on making because of that. The single greatest, as Jen said in the preface there, the single greatest advantage of a book is its comprehensive nature. It's taking you from the beginning to the end, and one person is telling you that. Now that person might miss something, or they might have opinions, but that's okay. When you're looking for a comprehensive thing, you kind of like want a stand-in mentor, a stand-in, master to kind of take you through it, and then learn that school of thought, and then if there's something in there, and then of course you're your own person, you can go out and assess that versus something else. What you really don't want is to read a resource where people are fighting over who's right. And that's the biggest complaint I have about wikis. I've used wikis before, and had one paragraph directly contradict a paragraph that came 3 paragraphs later. And it was almost like the author snuck in that paragraph and knew that the other author wasn't going to see it. It's like, I don't want to read a knowledge battleground. I want to read the consistent, knowledgeable, experienced opinions and principles from an author who does this professionally. That's who I want to hear from. I don't want to hear from a bunch of whoever is fighting about it, whoever even knows, right? I don't want that. So that's my biggest complaint about MDN. There's a lot of people who post to MDN, and they're phenomenal people, and they're very knowledgeable, and there's a lot of people who aren't. And there's this ongoing debate about what gets in there and what doesn't. But it is more valuable than some of the other resources that are out there. And I'll just mention 3 other resources, and I'm going to try as fast as possible to summarize them. W3 Schools. I'm not even going to go there. You can go there on your own. W3 Schools will almost always be the first thing that comes up. W3 Schools is now a relatively reputable source. At one point, they jokingly called it W3 Fools because it was so full of bad information and outdated content. A lot of times when it comes up, it'll have just know that it's not always going to have the right thing. And then another resource, of course, Free Code Camp coding. I can't recommend against it enough. It's one of the worst resources ever. I can say that after several months of objective experience, putting 40 people through it, not a single one could make a web page because it's not comprehensive. It doesn't cover all the bases. And that's just the facts. I'm sure there's a bunch of MDN resources and stuff like that, but all of these boot camps and all these alternatives for a professional textbook, I believe, fall really flat on their face, and that's why we're going with the book. What is supposed to replace GIF? GIF. I call it GIF. GIF is... GIF has an interesting history, and we'll talk about it when we get to it in the book, but the spoiler is there is nothing to replace it. I think that for a second they were talking about animated PNGs. By the way, a small movie is always better than a GIF in terms of space, and GIFs are really big. They were never meant to do animation. It's pretty cool how that does it, by the way. So that's what, I don't know what's going to replace GIF. I don't think anything's going to replace GIF. I think that's a false statement, as you saw me, right? All my questions about CSS Grid. JavaScript makes sense to me. CSS Grid is black magic. I still have to work through it. Actually, there's really fun things when we get to the CSS Grid thing. There's Flexbox, the zombies. There's a bunch of fun resources for mastering Flexbox and CSS Grid out there. And for anybody who doesn't know what those are for laying out stuff on the web page. We haven't got in there yet, so I think we're going to jump in and go a little bit farther. If anybody needs to stretch their legs or anything, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to go back at it. All right, so where's my book, my thing? Actually, let's do this. Let's keep you guys on, and then I'll just switch over to, since it is full screen. So we'll do that. All right, so getting started in web design. So this is where she goes into the history of web design and what it's been all about. Everybody on this chat, I imagine, has grown up with the web. There's probably a few of you. In fact, I need to go back to the chat. Is there anybody on the chat who actually, raise your hand if you were alive before the internet existed, the World Wide Web existed? If you don't mind admitting how old you are. Yes. Yeah. Sinhair, I couldn't agree more. I got to read this comment. CSS Grid and Flexbox is like looking over the carnage of a decade-long battle between browsers, designers, and standards. It is inherently confusing. If we redid internet today, it would be different. I agree. I do agree with that. I do agree. It's the best we got. You're from 88. Yes. Born in 71. How's it going? 90. So we have a lot of people here. This is really great that are, of the time. I, of course, remember the internet coming out. I remember pulling somebody out of the hallway and saying, "You have to see this right now," and it was a clickable image in the NCSA web browser in my college of my college campus where you could go to the different departments. And I knew in that instant that the web was going to take off. And in fact, I'm going to tell a couple stories here about that. I'm known for telling stories. So I'll tell you the story of how I came to become Nike's webmaster, internal webmaster. So I started when, first of all, it's a long story. I was in computer science. I started in French and then I turned into computer science. And then I went to, and then I started studying languages. So I went back to Russian. And I had served a French mission. I've talked about this in the past. This isn't about me. I just want to tell you how I came to know it. And so I was in the humanities lab, and we did a lot of, if you want to hear a lot of BSing about all of this, you can watch the previous stream before this one. But long story short, I was working in the language lab and the multimedia center for the humanities. And there was a lot of multimedia going on there. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but there was a thing called Macromedia Director, precursor to Flash and all that. And there were a lot of Macs there. There were Windows machines, and there was a lot of activity going around with information and language. And we would use a thing called Gopher to look for different resources, which was basically a big file structure for the whole internet. And then the first time I saw a web browser, it shows one here. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the future. I'm going to do everything in my power to learn this. And I did. I talked about this in Autodidactic Habits. And I read all the web pages. I read the source code. I taught it to my friend who was an ophthalmologist. So I believe was the first one to ever put any pictures related to eye surgery on the internet at all. And then ultimately I got a job because I knew how to use the background tag, which we'll play with, and became the webmaster for FiberNet, a small internet service provider, which is still around today. And from there, applied for Teleport, and from Teleport was recruited into Nike, where I built their intranet, covered the Olympics and a bunch of other fun things. Wrote one of the first blogs, if not the first blog. And in Java, I had to write an engine for that, and Perl, and a bunch of stuff. So that's my history with this, and I got into all of this through web development. So as soon as I saw, I'd always been kind of a tinkerer. I really did a lot of HyperCard. I coded story games and Dungeons and Dragons character generators when I was 14, but it wasn't until I saw the web and its potential that I really got into it, and I decided to do all of my front end thing. And so, how come this story is relevant? The reason that I've picked learning web design as the first technology to teach anyone is because it's such a great entry-level technology. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's growing at a rate of 19%, I think, per year. It's one of the top 3 of all technical professions. To learn, cybersecurity expert analyst is the fastest growing at 38%. And senior software developer is, I think, second at like 23%. Anyway, and it requires the least amount of skill, education, not skill. So this is one of the reasons I teach it to everybody. It is definitely considered the ground floor of technology skills. A lot of times it's not even listed in a job description because they kind of assume you know it. It's the first thing, if anything, that's taught in a computer language, course in most middle schools and traditional schools, even though they're really outdated. And we had fun with that. With the marquee tag, we played with that last night. We'll play with it again, guys. Don't worry, because there's a bunch of stuff that's been outdated and it's gone the way of the past. So that's my background. In this section of the book, they talk about the first exposure to Unix. Yes. Oh, that's probably worth saying. So our group here is like talking about this. My first exposure to Unix at all was through the web. So when I went to work at Teleport, well, actually, when I was building FB.pl, which was a back-end tool that I wrote on a Mac, I didn't even know what Unix was. That was on a desk made of cardboard boxes. I kid you not. We had our first child, my ex-wife and I, and I, put that together. And then I got this other job, and the team there at this internet service provider, they're all Unix people. So I was allowed to work on a Sun Spark station. If you know Last Miles, Dennis on our stream, he uses them all the time. And I was just, this is so awesome. And one time I said to Joey, who I've also talked about, done videos about, was like, oh, this would be so great if I had it at home. And he goes, well, you can always use Linux. And I was like, what's Linux? You know? And ever since then, of course, I've never recovered. I put Linux on my Mac. I did. I put Mach Linux on my Mac in probably 94, I want to say. So that 93, 94. And then, this guy's, after that, I was just, just done. So that's where this all comes from. SolarWinds Desiring. All right, so let's go back to the book for a second here. I'm just reading the comments before we do turn back. Yeah. Where I can improve it. Yeah, I think so. I agree with that, Ario. Yeah, I recommend HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as your first experience with any technology in terms of coding for lots of reasons that we'll get into as we go through, particularly when we talk about the JavaScript section. When we get to the JavaScript section of this book, I'm going to give you the spiel about why I think JavaScript is a better first language than Python. And we can talk about that then. All right, so let's go back to the book and we keep moving on. Let's see here. So, though my experience teaching web design courses and workshops, I've had the opportunity to meet people of all kind of backgrounds, and you guys have shared some of yours. I've been a print designer for 17 years, and now I'm feeling pressure to provide web design services. Well, yeah. I mean, if this is kind of an old, I think this is probably a dated section of this book right here. It's pretty fair to say if you are doing anything in print media, you're doing web stuff now. There's print media is still fun, by the way. If anybody has ever played around with InDesign or PageMaker or Quark, I love that stuff. Laying out pages and stuff. But yeah, that's what we're doing now. Been a programmer for years. I want to shift my skills to web development because there are good job opportunities in my area. There are opportunities in web development, as I mentioned. You can do your own research on that. If you go to rdbx.gg/jobs, you can actually read about one area of jobs, those statistics that I quoted to you. And it should tell you, there you go, rdbx.gg/jobs. 32% growth rate for security analyst and computer science, software developer, web developer, 13%. Okay, 73,000. So you can go read that if you want, and that has links to the other stuff. All right. So then we have another thing too about web design is we're going to cover in a series called Good to Gig why having a profile website is so essential today. People have very different opinions from me on this, but I have seen over and over again beginning people that I've mentored get positions, and the ones who get the positions almost always have a profile of some kind, particularly in development. Sometimes the engineers, SRE types, not developer types, can get a job without it, but it's usually a good idea to have a portfolio no matter what. I think it's even more important than a LinkedIn site these days. And if you join me off stream, you might see me working on it because I'm constantly trying to keep mine up to date and, tweak it so that, I can maintain professional employment opportunities just like the rest of you. I tinkered with web pages in high school, and I think it might be something that I'd like to do for a living. Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. You can make some crazy fun stuff. In fact, during the JavaScript thing, I might do a separate series about how to make an HTML5 game using Phaser. You can make some pretty amazing RPGs and platformers and Flappy Bird and whatever with very, very little skill other than JavaScript and HTML and CSS. So it's really fun. Whatever the motivation, the first question is always the same. Where do I start? Well, we're just going to start making stuff. Where do I start? We're going to cover the sidebar first here. So frequently when people come to me who are mentors, who want to be mentored, it turns out after I teach them HTML and CSS, in one case particular, he just wanted a site up that had his product on it. Didn't really care how it got there. And wasn't really interested in learning HTML or CSS, and it didn't come out until I started teaching to him. He's like, well, I really just want a site up. Like, okay, great. And the number one recommendation I have right here is to go to Wix. My wife has a Wix site. However, the problem with having a site like this, even if they seem easier to you, is that you don't have any control. They own you. And by the way, it's really, really hard. Whatever you do, do not get a domain from them. because it's almost impossible to rip it out of their hands, and you want to do, they hold your domain hostage almost, it seems, because they want you to stay on their service. And so just don't, yeah, if you're going to do that, make sure you get a domain someplace else. It's not a topic for right now, but suffice it to say, if you're not into learning how to make your own websites by coding them, these are the options for you. Squarespace is pretty good. Lots of people have WordPress, but WordPress is riddled with holes and bugs. People laugh about WordPress at DEF CON series for hackers. Just be really careful. I think Wix is probably the most reliable. Weebly was pretty good there for a while, but I think this sidebar is a little bit dated. All right, so we'll go back to where do I start? Maybe you're reading this book as a part of a full-time course of web design development. Maybe you just bought it to expand your skill stack. Maybe you're just reading along with Mr. Rob on the internet. So what do I need to do? Here it goes. Employers may not require a web designer. I love that she and I have so many similar ideas about this. Employers may not require a web design degree, but they will expect to see working sample sites to demonstrate your skills. They will, and they'll, and not only that, you'll be going for a job as a Go developer. And there's kind of this unspoken thing. It's like, if you were just imagine you're in a meeting and you're like, well, I don't know HTML. It's like, well, yeah, just throw a website up and then we'll do blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, but I don't know HTML. And they'll be like, what? You're a Go developer or whatever, and you're a Rust developer and you don't know HTML. People argue with me on that point all the time. And I'm telling you, they're wrong. People expect you to know HTML and basic CSS. And if you don't know it, you look like that kind of one-off kind of person. You're either really brilliant because you're just doing C and assembly the whole time. You can't be bothered with a website and web HTML and stuff like that. Or you're like, weren't paying attention in that class that everybody has to take when they learn HTML. So just, go through it and do it. Not to mention that it's extremely empowering. Even if you're a middle schooler, you can make the most compelling, amazing book reports that have interactive media in them as easily as you could write it in Microsoft Word or something. So, use these opportunities. There's one guy, he used to negotiate with his teacher to do different things. There's one, you can it's rather than writing a creative, for creative writing, right? You could write a story in creative writing, or you could write an interactive story game in creative writing and put it on a web page. There's just so many empowering reasons to learn HTML and CSS. So that's what it's about. This next section, it takes a village. There are lots and lots of roles. I used to work for the web mistress, Lynn Saprell, and she was amazing. I was the CGI guy. I was the back end guy. I got kind of tired of the front end stuff, and so I started just coding Perl all day, every day. And that's kind of what happened. Sometimes you have a different graphics people who are in charge of the images. When I was at Nike, the graphics design team, there was the internal communications team, very non-technical people, amazing people. I still have very fond memories. That's how I got to go to the Olympics, by the way. I got to take Phil Knight's seat in the Nagano Winter Olympics when he didn't want to go, I guess. And so I was tapped to go with our internal communications director, and I was like her pocket tech. And so I was cropping silo cups out of snowboarder parties. I actually have a blog on this. If you want to read it, I can send it to you. But it was really, really fun. And I just want to say something. It was one of those opportunities where technology is an enabler. If you had told me that, when I was learning Russian or whatever, that one day I was going to be, sitting in a forum, with a bunch of dejected Russians who just lost to the Finns, or I was going to be at the actual, infamous snowboarder party on the ultra private elite, Nike village within the campus. And I was there seeing Olympians all around me playing video games with the marketing guru who was spitting off stats and telling me to take pictures of everybody. If you told me that was going to happen because I learned web development, I would have said, you're full of it. That's not. So sometimes learning technology is a great life enabler, and it puts you to a different place, whether it might just be money, it might be opportunity. I will never forget Peekaboo Street being so, for lack of a better word, bitchy because, of her run, and her knee was hurt and she was just kind of hobbling around in the village. And I was like, seriously, I was like sitting there, the first ever snowboarder competition in the I forget his name. I actually put him on my blog, but he won the gold, and he was like sitting right next to me with his Silo Cup, and I'm just interviewing him. I'm thinking to myself, I am at the Olympics with gold winners because I know web. It was crazy. It was crazy, and I did my job hard. I worked really hard, and the internal communications person, I was her favorite person because I wrote interactive chats for Phil Knight about the, I wrote a chat application in Java actually that ran as a Java applet. You guys will laugh. Um, to communicate with the rest of the company about the really intense things that we're going through because of Michael Myers, documentary about Nike business practices. And so I wrote a chat application and, met John McEnroe and his family, and we were able to interview him and talk to him firsthand. And I didn't get to meet the sprinter, what's his name, nor Tiger Woods, but I made all the software that team used when they did that. I'd moved on to the Nike.com team at that point. My point is, it's not so much to brag, is to say, just when I think back, it says all this stuff about creation and roles and stuff. Those were the roles. So there was the internal communications. It was in charge of using the web technology usefully within the company in what's called an intranet, which they'll talk about, sharing information. And then there was also, the graphics design team. And I forget her name, but I can see her face just like yesterday. And she's like, we need to make SwooshNet better. And I was like, I absolutely agree. And so she was like just a master of graphics, and they would send us Nike graphics, right? She would send me these big, huge graphics. I was like, this is too big for the web page. We can't do this. And I was like, what are you talking about? And we like work on downsizing the images and stuff, and that will come up later. But, and we got those on there. And when we released that, it was like just huge hit. The whole company was just all ablaze with how cool our new SwooshNet was. And there I was leading the whole effort. I actually got an award for that. So it's just really enabling, but takes a team, and you have to work with everybody on your team, and it's not just one person, but it can be just you and your code making a profile site, but it can do so much more. After I told somebody how to do Jamstack, I was informed, I can't remember who told me this on the live stream, that they had used the techniques that I had told them to put up a site very quickly during one of the demonstrations that I happened to really agree with the topic of the demonstration. And I was like, he said, I just want you to know that you enabled this to happen because you shared this knowledge with us and we were able to do it. So all of these things are just kind of feeding into this motivation. I hope you'll get a sense of about how empowering just basic web design skills can be. You might put, there's one boy who put up his whole scout troop online. There's another one who put up, he was washing cars and stuff and detailing until his parents turned to him. Until his boss turned to him and said, wait, web development? Here, come here. I got this for you to do. And so they started working on that other stuff because they didn't even know he was capable of. All right, time for me to take a breath. I'm going to go listen to what you guys have to say. I think it's time for a chat break, and then we'll keep going on. Your school doesn't teach web development. That's too bad. Still have a book on CGI. Common Gateway Interface. That's a way of talking to the server to do things. And I made scripts to process forms into mail and stuff like that. It depends on what you're using. It's still out there. It's still used. It's still completely valid. It's just not popular because it uses a server. And that's a little bit of a deep detail to describe. But CGI is not used very much anymore. 2020 web development is everywhere. Your parents' fridge is an interface. Yes. I learned recently that the GNOME interface of PapaOS that I'm using right now is all JavaScript. Yeah. That blew me away. Somebody said that Linus Torvalds left the GNOME 3 project because it was in JavaScript. I don't know if that's true. That was a fun fact. What else we got there? Let's see. Your neighbor offers you a job at Samsung. Right. I've yet to be able to find another truly free domain name service. I don't think there are any free ones. Freenom is not free. Freenom. Also, be careful if you're going to do Freenom. If you know what that is, Freenom is a lot of those domains are blocked. So just be careful with that. Netlify, right? Is that how you guys are? I don't know. If you're using PaaS, platform as a service, that's what that is. They will give you a subdomain, something like Heroku. Yeah, Netlify will give you a free name. They'll give you something.netlify.app. If you use Replit, they'll use that too, and we'll talk about that. Replit is another place that'll give you a free one. Heroku will give you Elastic. Yep. I haven't used Heroku very much, but yeah. Don't really want to pay for anything. I just want a free domain. Yeah, you can get that with Netlify, no problem. You can get it with GitLab or GitHub too. You just have to use their domain. But if you're okay with that, you got that. There's actually an argument to keep that. If you're afraid of like the legacy, so like if you were to die and stop being able to pay for your domain, or whatever, then so most websites are not, the data in them would be out of date at that time anyway. So that's not a big thing, but web dev would definitely change in 5 years. Now, there was no Node, Angular, or React 5 years ago. WebAssembly is getting quite popular, but I still think JS will be prevalent for a long while. I agree. I think JavaScript's got a big hold on things. Too much so, actually. But all right. So if there's no other questions, let's go on. And I think it's fair to say that this approach, this reboot of this, is going much better because it's, we're focusing on the content. Content wrangling, anyone who's a web designer, that's they're getting the content. Information architect, IT design, organizes the content. UX design, content strategy, which content's going to go where. This is all stuff. This is a big one though I want to talk about. User experience, interaction, and user interface design. It's called UX. So user experience is not, where does the widget go? It's like, what is the overall user experience that's going to improve click-throughs, and so people will continue to use this service. This is very important. This is what they actually relate it to dollars, and somebody posted that in the other stream when I did it. But there's like $1 per minute conversion on how long it takes and how many clicks you get that they use. But suffice it, more importantly, how somebody uses your website is about people at the end of the day. And, technology is about creating solutions for people. And I just want to mention that because it's often forgotten by engineers that the reason you're doing all of this is for the people, not because the technology is very interesting or something. So, and we're going to talk more about that. User research and testing reports, understanding the needs, desires, and limitations of the users essentially to the success and design of the website, web application, the approach of designing around. Okay, so I think this is the best place for me to talk about this right now. We'll finish this section and I'll talk about it. Yeah, actually, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now just because it's on my mind. Designing of this site or web application. See this little tiny thing right here? It's one little reference to a really big thing. And this is probably my only segue into this really important topic I want to cover that's not covered by the book. So there are two main divisions, I would argue. There's 3 or 4, but I'll stick with all of them. So the first one is what I call the doc web. And the second is called the app web. The third I call the broadcast web. And the fourth is what I think is an emerging thing called the conversation web. So I've talked about this before, but I'm going to just hit on it briefly. So our web is being fractured and splintered and destroyed. That's not hyperbole. There, you can go to the web archive and you can no longer find content there because of things like improperly developed React applications or improper use of JavaScript in general. People, for the sake of Flash or whatever, flashiness, not Flash itself, are choosing to pick functionality like that over the ability to read and search and archive the web. And I believe it's fundamentally because they're mixing these two parts of the web. This is something I think is an original idea. It's not particularly, innovative thinking. It's just stating the obvious. But there is a real rift. And she doesn't talk about this in the book at all, so I want to talk about it. There's a really significant rift happening right now. It's been around for a long time between web design and the document web, I would say, and the applications web. And so I heard some of you talking about it in the chat. And that's having web applications, like, I don't know, you think of a web application that's really clearly an application. You're clicking on things, you're moving stuff around, you can play a full-blown game, 3D games and everything in a web now. And that's all fantastic. I think the web is a great applications platform. We actually have things called progressive web apps, and I'm all about that. But we're doing so at the price of being able to search the document web, the original web, the web that came out so that we could click on things and read things more effectively at CERN, and this division and dichotomy is causing a big problem because people are making apps that should be documents, and that is getting us in trouble. And they don't care. They actually thumb their nose at this problem. And I'm not gonna save my Pizza Hut story until we get to the legal implications of doing this wrong. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the reason that she has a little or here is because a site is generally, considered to be a document. That's where the term document and page and all web pages come in. But then there's also web apps. So Netlify, one of these providers for hosting, has changed their extension from .io, their suffix, to .app, which implies that everything that's being built there, including your blog, is now an app. Well, if you put the content of your blog behind several React components, or if you put your entire documentation for your language, and I'm not going to say the language, you're going to have to go find out which one, behind React so that nobody can even read your documentation unless they have a JavaScript enabled browser, you are bad for the internet. You're bad for humanity, and you need to stop and fix your ways and re-examine your life because that is not what the web was intended for. And if you continue to do that, the web that we know and love is going to die. And it already started. It has already really died in many ways. People would say. I actually am working on several efforts to try to bring some new life to non-web technologies for communicating knowledge, mostly because the idea of exchanging knowledge has sort of been lost from the web. It's more like TV plus applications and a few blogs in 100 200 character things that you read here and there. So, but the one, I'll stop there. I could go forever on that topic. But it's really important to distinguish these types of things in your mind when you're going through, and you'll be a better web designer and web developer. There's nothing wrong with having an app, and there's nothing wrong with having doc. What the problem is when you mix the two. If you develop a documentation site, great. Keep the document site there. If you want to make a fancy graph that shows how much some statistic is being used, great. Progressively add in a JavaScript widget that demonstrates that, but doesn't prevent your users from reading about it in other ways. We're going to read about progressive enhancement. I'm going to return to this topic, but that's the definition of progressive enhancement. And unfortunately, there are a lot of really significant projects and people that are not doing this, and they need to. They really need to. So I'm going to put that there. All right, wireframe diagrams. So wireframe diagrams is how you make your site. You can just get a piece of paper. You don't need a particular thing about how to do this, but it is nice to know where you're going to go and how you're going to get around in your site. So you can read that and have fun. Storyboards are fun. This is more about applications, guys. If you're going to do a storyboard like this is more about what are called user stories, and how is someone going to use your site. If your site's just a documentation site, you don't need a storyboard, right? They go to the site and they read it. Here's the organization. So really, really good stuff there. If you want to get into that, go ahead and read about that some more. I tend to think that if you just stick with tried and true models, such as, content on the left, some menus on the top, and main content in the middle, or, you're good. I'm going to go back to, I think we can almost go to the chat again. So here we have visual graphics design. Because the web is a visual medium, you need to know about visual graphics. You should know things about tiles and, let's see, style tiles. I haven't played with that. Color schemes, branding elements, and UI. Oh, this is a cool thing. So this is when you have all of the colors that go good together. You might not think you're going to be a good designer, and if so, just go get a template that's made by a professional web developer. There's a lot that are available for free, and then hack on that. And then you can use that for your website. But now you'll have that. Very rarely are you going to actually be writing from scratch a website. Usually you're going to be taking an existing template made by a professional, spent many hours on it, and you're going to be adapting it for your purposes until and if you want to like copy all that out with your own code at some point. So yeah, that just a nod to go look at other sites out there. Some homework here would be for you to go look at several professional profiles out there and see if you can find a style that you like. If you were in my group, if I was mentoring you, I would have you go research all the websites and name your top 5 pages that you found over the last week that you just like the way they look. You just really love them. And, you know, because you're going to learn a lot by just copying those. And so go find out what they're all negatives, but, you know, go find what those are, write them down, say, how are they doing this? And that will kind of feed your motivation to keep going with learning the basics so that you can find a template that matches that. A lot of sites, a lot of them, they're not copyrighted, so you can actually use the same code and then swap it out. There's actually a scene in Mr. Robot where Elliot says about that was his first hack. Elliot's first hack was he copied somebody else's HTML and took it and changed it to be his own, and he calls that his first hack. I just think that's funny because it's not really a hack, but do designers need to learn to code? Yes, that don't need to talk about that any further. Particularly now with Vue and React and stuff. Code slinging, a large scale of websites with websites. Building process involves creating and troubleshooting documents. We're going to talk about that. Front end development, front end and authoring, writing the HTML. We're going to break down what those things are. Oh, here we go. So there's 3 main languages involved with web development. We've talked about this a lot. Hypertext markup language. You can remember hyper as in hyperspace, like jumping from one place to another. So that's what happens when you click on something. I know that you do it every day and you take it for granted, but you got to understand that was a very novel thing. That was new. People were getting awards for inventing hyperlinking, and and not just here, right? And other things. Markup language is when you take normal language and you mark it up so that it has the content has different significance depending on how it's marked up. And we'll talk about that. Cascading style sheets. This is the style or the look and feel of the web page. And that the markup is the content, and the style sheets is how it looks, and JavaScript is the behavior. That's how you make stuff move, and you update things depending on events. Somebody clicked here or whatever. So those are the 3 languages we'll be learning. And it's important you understand this. And people beat themselves up all the time. And I'm like, you got to understand, you're learning 3 languages here, and they're not even closely related. These are 3 distinct languages that you're learning to do web development. So that's that. HTML is not a programming language. This is a lie. That is a lie. That's a lie, Jen. Sorry, that's a lie. And I agree with the Oxford computer science professor who disagrees. This is a lie. This is a really common thing. Harvard at T says the same thing. HTML is a programming language. It's just a declarative programming language. So a declarative programming language tells the computer how to do things, what the results should be. No, tells it what the results should be, not how to do them. Do this and then do this. That's imperative or procedural programming. So don't let anybody tell you. The safe thing to say is that HTML is a coding language, because coding somehow has come to mean anytime you write code, whether that code is programming or not, depending on somebody's particular definition. So if you want to be safe, you can say, I'm learning to code. And like, well, what are you coding? HTML. HTML is not a programming language. Like, yeah, I said I'm coding. I'm writing code. I'm writing HTML code. Oh. So coding is a markup language. They don't teach you markdown at all, which we're going to learn after this, but we're going to learn this first. So if you have any questions about that, styling. So this, again, as I said, is the color and look. JavaScript is the DOM. That's, the DOM, the document object model. So the document object model is how you break down all of the different pieces of the web page. And I'm going to show you what this looks like really quick before we get too deeply into this. And I promise you I'll take some comments here. So let's go to, I guess we could just go to RDBX. And so if I inspect element here, right click, inspect element, You can see the inspector here, and you can see the DOM. So you have a root node, which is, it's not really HTML, but the document is the root node. But HTML is a node under that. And then you have a child node under HTML called head, and head has a child node called title, blah, blah, blah. So it's a tree. It's actually called a node tree, or a rooted node tree to be precise, in which, if you know computer science, is a form of a graph, but generally referred to as a node tree. And let me read the rest of this really quick. So that's the DOM. The DOM is all of the things that compose your web page and how they're displayed on the page. And using JavaScript, you can change the behavior of things and activate things by messing with the DOM. Angular, Bootstrap, React, Vue, and others. That's what front-end developers do. This side note here refers to the World Wide Web Consortium, which I was informed the other day has now sort of rectified its relationship with another organization, which is far more important for you to understand. I'm going to put a note here, and that's called WhatWG. WhatWG FTW. So we're going to go visit this right now, and I have to give you the history of this. So before I do that, I'm going to read some chat, and then I'm going to tell you the history of the standards bodies. And since this is at this point in the reading, I'm going to go ahead and cover that. So let me read some comments. Aren't viable. Most people don't need interactability, but let's say Google Maps. Yeah, good point. Yep. Yeah, are you talking? Yeah, the Restream bot. Unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry about the Restream bot. I haven't rewritten that myself. I want to make my own. Haven't done that yet. I'd rather hear what's going on with YouTube. 3/4 will be eaten. What reader is he using? I am using just the default PDF reader that comes with Pop! OS, and I have night mode on. How to display? It's a markup language. How to display copy? Don't know what that means. How do you guys practice CSS? Seems to be a lot of content. We'll be practicing CSS a lot in this series, so I'll show you how to do that. The book is called Learning Web Design from Jennifer Robbins, 5th edition. It's at the beginning of the video. Yep. Depends on your definition of web app or Google Maps, but I generally agree. Just give it as an example, right? God bless night mode. Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Was there anything else that was significant that scrolled off the chat that I can't see? If so, I'm not going to go back. I could, but for CSS, there are a lot of tower games that teach you. You might want to also look into SCSS or SAS if you want more programming language like. Okay, so those of you who don't know what that is, this is a thing in the web world. There are languages that turn into the 3 languages that we talked about. There are a lot of them. And so web development has gotten complicated because there used to be a language called Jade, now it's Pug, which is a replacement for HTML, but you had to compile it and then you would get HTML out of it. SCSS and SAS are languages that aren't CSS that you have to compile and then transpile or whatever, and then you get CSS out of it. So the entire web development proposition is really a lot more complicated today. Some would say too complicated. And I'm really glad that this book focuses on the simple basics so that then you can decide if and when you need to get complicated about all the other layers you can add on top of it. There's another technology called TypeScript, which adds very strict typing, which is like, is this a number or not, to JavaScript, which it otherwise doesn't have, and it's kind of a problem. So there's lots of other stuff to read here, but this is a beginner approach that's not going to, hopefully it's not going to overwhelm you with all of these other things. So I'm glad you mentioned that though, because because you're going to hear about that a lot. Doesn't HTML tell the browser what things are not, what to do with them? That would make it not a programming language. Well, I don't know. If you want to go read about that, go Google on YouTube, is HTML a programming language, and look up the Oxford professor who justifies it, and I agree with him completely. The book that we're referring to is Learning Web Design, 5th edition from Jennifer Robbins. A lot of times I think the complications are intentionally created by gatekeepers. I do too. I think they're over-engineered because engineers love making things complicated. I actually have a blog post that's pretty popular called HTML was a bad idea. And I'm not going to talk about it now. I'm going to talk about it in the Pandoc series after this, when we talk about Markdown, which is, kind of a sarcastic name referring to markup because some writers made an alternative to HTML that's way better. And you use it all the time and you don't know it. So we'll talk about that in Pandoc, but we're not going to talk about that Markdown at all in this particular series. Okay, so let's see. For the guy asking about the document reader, it's called Events, the default GNOME document viewer. Thank you very much. Some engineers want simple, somewhat complicated. It's true. I think the complications are mainly due to not having a standard nowadays, and there being different opinions. Well, not having standards has been the problem all along from the very beginning, and we'll get into that more as we get into the actual tags and elements and stuff. And that's actually a really good segue into this next part, which is going to talk to you about who is responsible for the standards. Where did all this stuff come from? So the standards body tends to be known to be W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, which was originally formed by Tim Berners-Lee from CERN, which is, if you don't know, is the Hadron Collider, the biggest in the world, in Switzerland. And the World Wide Web was actually created to exchange data with other scientists and share it with the world. That's where the World Wide Web came from. There's a nice little piece on that in the Particle Fever documentary that you can watch for free these days on YouTube. I strongly recommend it. It's fantastic. But it's all about the discovery of the Higgs boson subatomic particle. And it's really fascinating if you like that stuff. So thanks to science and CERN, we have the World Wide Web. We wouldn't have it without it. Just like so many things from NASA, Velcro, a bunch of stuff that we get out of science. Unfortunately, engineers and scientists are often the worst possible people to create simple technologies that the world can use. The first HTML that was created was very complicated. There's no way your average person could make it. But that was what you had. And they said, well, and as just like any technologist, they said, well, we'll fix that by making another technology. We'll fix the problem we made by making a complicated technology by making another complicated technology that simplifies the first technology. And then everybody is then dependent on a web browser. And then we go into the era of browser wars. And if there's anybody, I'm sure there's people out there right now who remember it. We go into the era of trying to fight over control because whoever controlled the browser controlled the eyes on the internet, and there were lawsuits, there were antitrust lawsuits against Microsoft over this, but it was all about people messing with the standard. So what about the standard? So here we go. The World Wide Web Consortium, or w3.org, which you can go visit. That's HTTPS now these days. That's actually a bug. Is now they started out being the standards body, and then they became irrelevant, and then they now apparently, as of 2019, they're back in conjunction with the other main standards body, which is the one you care about, whatwg.org. Oops, I didn't spell that right. And this is where this is literally the manual on HTML. Can I just type right? You know what it is? I'm kind of sitting weird. What? wg.org. All right. So if you look at the bottom, you can see who's in the WhatWG group. The WhatWG is Apple, Google, Mozilla, where Jen works, or works with Shirotis, and Microsoft. So long story short, I'm going to give you the whirlwind version of this history. The W3C is just like any scientific body, lumbering along at its own pace. Didn't really care about doing anything quickly or, frankly, doing what people wanted because it didn't answer to anybody. It answered to itself. And so along comes, and they made browsers that were really clunky and lame. And then along comes these really hungry people who want to make lots of money, like Mark Andreessen, who still is now a venture capitalist, proves what I said. And he's like, we got to make this better. So he makes, Mozilla web browser and Netscape. He turns it into Netscape, which they then sell. You used to have to go down to the store and buy your web browser and install it on disk. And they made a lot of money. Netscape became this big monster behemoth company. The fact that people don't even know the name Netscape today just continues to flabbergast me. I just cannot believe that people don't even know what that organization was or that it existed. It's almost like it's like in 5 years or 6 years going, there's no such thing as Google anymore. I mean, it was that big. It just came and died within 2 years. And so we had that was going on, and they decided to do whatever they wanted to. They made HTML into what they wanted in order to make customers happy. So customers wanted backgrounds, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that later. Ugly backgrounds, by the way. They thought, well, hey, let's put a blink tag in there. Let's do all this other stuff. And the standards bodies are like, oh my God, no, why are you even adding this? The very first web browser, very practically, only provided a gray background and the same color text, because it was scientifically proven to be consistent. It was very easy to read. It was a reader is what it was. So here we go. Here's your mosaic. Here's your mosaic. There it is. All right. So there's your web browser back in the day. And it was a reader. It was designed to share information. There was no question. It was actually not very accessible to the colorblind people, and there's so many problems with it. But it was it. You couldn't change the background. You couldn't change the color of the text. Purple was visited text, and blue was a link that had not been clicked on. That was it. And it was all scientific, and that's what you had to use. Well, along comes somebody like Andreessen, and they're like, well, I'm going to take this since I've been involved with it. I'm going to make my own, going to release it, and then I'm going to, eventually sell it, and I'm going to make it better. And I'm going to add all these things. I don't care about your standards. And that launched into the beginning of the browser wars. And then Microsoft's like, we can do that too. Why don't we put ours on the web? Why don't we put our browser, Microsoft Internet Explorer, on the desktop so everyone gets it automatically? They don't have to wait for 3 hours to download it or go down to the store and buy it from a store off the shelf and install it. And everybody else was like, oh, hell no, you can't do that. That's antitrust. And then Bill Gates and Monkey Boy Ballmer literally laughed at the congressman about that whole issue. They were sitting there laughing at them because, like, what are you going to do? It's just crazy. If you want to know a little bit of a history around that, that's what that has been. It's kind of a history. Okay, so take that environment, fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, and it was like, no, we're done with this. We need a new standard. And so the whole web was just a mess. The W3C couldn't get anything done. The corporations were just running over them, doing whatever they wanted to. They didn't care. They said, what are you going to do? I don't see anybody using your browser. Everybody's using our browser. We're going to do whatever we want. And for some reason, which I don't really fully understand, they came together and they said, you know what, W3C, since you guys can't get it done, and what I mean is XHTML, HTML4, DHTML, all the stuff that they tried to come up with. Semantic Web, unfortunately, was in that. If you can't get it done, we're going to get it done. So they grouped up the biggest browser makers, Apple, Google, Mozilla, and Microsoft, and they said, we're going to form our own working group, and we're going to tell you what's going to be on the browser. And if you don't agree, we're sorry. And so I don't know when that was, but probably when that happened, W3C became pretty much defunct as an organization in terms of defining standards for HTML and CSS. There were still many, many other standards that they were really, really importantly involved in, including handicapped, browsing for the, accessibility and a bunch of other things. But for the web browser, they were done. Nobody cared. And so then was born the HTML Living Standard, and from that came HTML5. And 5 is the only thing you need to know about. And the reason we're on this page today, right now, is because in the book, we're on this thing where it says the World Wide Web Consortium is an organization that oversees development of web technologies such as blah. It was founded in 1994 by Tim Berners-Lee. The truth is that is all a lie now. They can think that they have stuff to do about the standards, but they really don't. And rumor has it, Vera was telling me, one of our members, that in 2019, and I might be behind on this, that they have had kind of a kumbaya moment, and these behemoth corporations have now said, okay, W3C, we're going to pass the torch and we'll work with you. But if you think for a second that those browser makers are not going to do whatever they want, because they have. And by the way, the good thing for all of us is that those four companies have really come to terms with the agreement. They almost all use the same browser now. In fact, Apple is the only one that of those four that doesn't use the same browser. Microsoft Edge uses Chromium underneath, which is the same as Chrome, which is what Google makes. And Apple has Safari. And what was the other one? There was one more. What was the other one? I forgot. I'll have to go look. So the point I'm making is that Microsoft, Apple, Google, Mozilla. Oh, right. Mozilla does their own thing, and they always will, because it's all in Rust. They have a completely separate code base, and they will never play that game. And that's probably good. We need to have them at odds with each other. But there's a good chance Safari. I don't know. Apple always does its own thing too, so it'll probably stay that way for a while. But it's safe to say Chromium is the dominant force in the industry right now. Why do you care? Because this page right here, and this is one you need to bookmark. So you need to bookmark, I believe it's just whatwg.org. You need to bookmark that because you're going to go there all the time. And the reason you're going to go there is you're going to go, rather than going to MDN, which is also good, but you want to go here first, because you're going to see this is the actual specification. This isn't somebody's interpretation of the specification. This is the specification. It's like, this is what the HTML element is. This is how it's approved. It's like hard-coded as an IDL, which is interface definition language. And they have really great examples here. And it's very succinct. It's not like, it doesn't have like a whole bunch of commentary and contradictory, posts from different authors and stuff. It's boom. It's like right to the point. It is the manual. RTFM. Read the fancy manual. And so there you go. That's what we should do about that. So I'm returning here. I've said everything I want to do about this particular window, but I have a feeling there's a lot of chat on that, which may have scrolled off by now, and that's okay. But I'm going to go back and revisit it. Biggest problem in the web is the different browsers interpreters different things differently. So many browsers with different versions. Yeah, it's bad for backwards compatibility, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. I mean, anybody who lived through the early 2000s and late 90s will tell you that the level of browser agreement today is absolutely astounding and reassuring and wonderful, even though it still sucks, right? We still have these problems. This is a good place to check. Can I use Flexbox? Yes, and let's do that. So there are two resources on the web that you absolutely can't live without. The first resource is what I just showed you, WebWG. The second resource, everybody on any web developer should be checking constantly, is Can I Use? And there's a third, it's kind of a tertiary one, but we'll still mention it. So Can I Use Flexbox? So this gives you a breakdown of whether you can use this particular CSS thing that allows you to center things across, a menu or something. It's called Flexbox. Somebody showed me this the other day, and I honestly, I confess I didn't know about it. This shows you. This makes it look like everybody's using these other things, right? But the more important statistic is, what are people actually using, and the usage relative. This shows you how many people are using what browser. Look at this. And this is based on, we did some research last time I showed this. This is based on a collection of research that samples what people are actually using in the world, across the entire world. Remember, across the entire world. Not everybody has iPhones. I imagine most of the iPhone users are, rich Americans or Europeans or something. This particular statistic really blew me away. 36.8% of all web traffic is coming from Chrome for Android. That's really significant. And we're going to come back to this statistic later when we talk about responsive design and what to develop for. But as you can see, some of these other browsers are so teeny tiny, you don't even really need to plan for them unless you have a very niche market. But this does tell you a lot about what to plan for. So this is caniuse.com. I'm going to go read about the chat on this. Oops. I forgot Microsoft giving away their version finally. Yeah. Blink and Marquee are my favorites. We did those last night, literally. HTML email. I don't know, man. That was a bad one. I remember harvesting emails off of people by clicking on their form tags for them when JavaScript first came out. That was a fun hack. I think SSL is probably the best example of engineering, totally agreeing on something. And SSL is just the thing that makes things secure when data is sent around. Yeah, it is sort of, it's got problems. You know, it's not even SSL anymore, right? It's TSL or TLS. Right, I was just going to say, right. Somebody caught me on that. Rip presto. That's a fair point, but as long as it is generally backwards compatible, I'm fine with it. Web is too insecure anyway, so I think it is fine. So, yep. Now what happens if you don't follow these guidelines? Well, you can't because the web browser doesn't support it, right? Let's see. Jamie Zawinski, of all people, he's sorry. He didn't mean to. I don't know who Jamie Zawinski is. I'm like revealing my ignorance. Who is Jamie Zawinski? Oh, Jamie Zawinski is the one who did HTML. The email? Wow. He was the one? Okay. So whoever it was who decided that we were going to make our emails into HTML, that's what Moshi Moshi's talking about. And that's, again, we're saying it's an entire brand of, we talked about, it takes a village, Jen did, and, who developing for the, for web is way different than developing for a email. And it's like an entirely different angle on web development. And it probably should never have existed. HTML emails are evil on so many levels. I just can't even say. By the way, if you want to avoid the evil of HTML in emails, certainly you can turn it off, but just use Proton Mail. Proton Mail shuts all of that down. It just shuts it all down. And you end up with pages that have like ridiculously ugly, broken images and everything until you approve it, but it won't let any mining or privacy validation or nefarious, packages coming in your email. So Proton Mail for the win on that. Are still using prehistoric stuff. If a big organization is using prehistoric stuff with IE, they deserve to die, and they probably will die. There's still people using Cobra. Using COBOL, and I'm not always saying that technical debt is a bad thing. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes things don't need to be redone. But Excite.com, right? We were showing that last night. Messed up for the guy being who convinced the suits to make Netscape open source. Oh, really? Did not know that. Pretty good information, Moshi. Thanks for that. All right, so we're going to turn back to the text again. I can get it up here. Here's the text here. Where are you? All right, so DOM scripting with JavaScript. So just know that there is one other website that I'm not going to talk about right now. We're going to talk about when we get to editors. It's codepen.io, and that's we'll talk about that later. So I don't know why she mentioned Ajax at all here. Ajax, which isn't called Ajax anymore, everybody uses Fetch now. This is like really, really ancient reference. Anybody use Ajax still? The asynchronous thing. I mean, it's kind of out of place because this is not a beginner topic, first of all. Everyone uses Fetch now. And they really do. In fact, let's go see if you can use Fetch. This is in the book, so I have to address it at this point. Although it doesn't really belong here, though. If you ask me, that's not a beginner topic at all. I'm going to search for Fetch. See who can use Fetch. Watch it not be in Chrome. Oh, it is. Thank God. Thank God. So, a modern replacement for XML HTTP request. So, when she's talking about Ajax, which is another horrible acronym because it has XML in the name, and nobody uses XML for that exchange anymore. Very rarely. It's almost always JSON, which you don't need to understand right now. That's why I'm confused why this is here, but I need to talk about it since it is here. All right. Ajax is still quite used, mainly taught in universities and such, right? You say Ajax all the time. Yeah, Ajax is people say Ajax because it's a word that's kind of entered our psyche as web developers, but it is not relevant. Nobody uses actual a. They look. We don't use XML almost ever, and the fact that they made a. I just really dislike it. I like that people refer to it more as fetch now. Fetch is the new replacement for XML, HTTP background request, which should never have had XML in the name, by the way. That was a huge mistake. And it's been proven over and over again by all the JSON that's taken over. They shouldn't have put the specific transfer format in the name of that method, in my opinion. I don't even know why we're talking about this, though, because it's like a really advanced topic. It says, you want to be a web developer, learning JavaScript is a basic requirement. Yes. Oh, here's where she says, go read Ethan Brown's learning book. Don't. Okay, we're not even going to talk about that right now, but that's not even the best book. The best book right now is Baptiste's The JavaScript Way, if you want to go right onto that. We're going to talk about backend development. So this is important, though, because it's talking about full stack developer unicorns. We're going to talk about that. Backend development is everything on the server. As I said, when I was at Nike, I was, I worked in the front end at first. And then I kind of got interested in Perl on the server side and learned Linux, all that. And those are all back-end things. So the job there is to write code that produces HTML or CSS and then spits it up to the website. In these days, that's not a thing anymore. You're producing JSON or in some cases XML, and you're spitting that up to the front-end page. And then the web page comes down and the JavaScript says, hey, I want that thing, and it takes whatever it accessed and makes it pretty and drives you a nice pretty web page, and that's the essence of modern web applications development, and so that's where backend comes in. Backend person is the one writing the API. That's called the application programmer interface, the CGI scripts common gateway interface to talk to the two. And if all of that is just making your eyes glaze over, don't worry. This is just an introduction to the different roles in web development. There's really no need for you to really truly understand all of that, other than to know that there are lots of different levels of web development that are these days are lumped together, and she's going to talk about that next. Let's talk about this one before we talk about this one here. So anytime you're going for a job in web development, you at least need to include the term full stack developer in your search terms, because this is the new horrendously bad term that everybody uses. And she says, when looking for a job in web development, post full stack developer. I didn't even realize she said about jobs there. That means a person who is fluent in both front end and back end and databases and a bunch of other stuff and Linux and containers. This is a rare breed of web designer. I would argue it's a non-existent breed of web designer who can handle, and it's not a web designer, by the way. At that point, it's a developer. It's a full stack developer who can handle all of the tasks mentioned earlier, from content to UX to front end. There are a few people out there that can do all those things, but I would argue that the science is against them on this, that they can do all of those things, but they can't specialize in one particular thing very well for any length of time. And this is one of the main reasons that this technology called Node got so popular, because it meant writing JavaScript in the web browser and writing JavaScript on the server on the back end. Another reason I'm kind of confused by why we're talking about this right now is because we haven't even talked about networks at all and what a network is. So once again, we're going through the book in order, but if this is confusing to you, just know that it's going to get more clear when we talk about networking coming up. But I believe it's misplaced at this point. It does tell you about languages on the back end: PHP, Ruby, .NET, Python, JSP, Go. I mean, this is really, really old. I just don't understand why this whole thing is even here. This is ancient. This information about backend development is absolutely ancient. So I'm gonna skip this right now. I'm actually gonna put a little note here that says, why are we even talking about this at this point? Because it's not a progressive learning. You're like being thrown into all of these titles about technologies you don't even know anything about yet. So why is this even here? No one knows what any of this is yet. So we're going to skip past this. I've spent enough time already. Let me see if I've got anybody with questions there real quick. So far, no. Oh, jQuery, right. It's like saying Kleenex or Q-tip. Yeah. Yeah, jQuery is a technology that was that came about to make it easier for all of that browser uh, disconnect to work. That's all you need to know about that for now. Whenever someone mentions XML in a stack, you know things are bad. Yeah, because it's ancient, it's out of date, nobody uses it. There's a few minor cases where it's still really used a lot, like SVGs. Full stack developer, jack of all trades, master of none. Yep. Not sure if too advanced, but there's also SSR, server-side rendering. Yep. Which ties in back end and front. Yeah. Yeah, it does. But server-side rendering is largely a myth. We'll talk about that. Not in this course. Static site generation, I think, is way more relevant for today and is not covered at all in the book. And we will cover that, but we're going to cover that when we cover Pandoc after this series. Full stack is the HR buzzword by far. Just so you know that it is a buzzword, okay? There's no such thing. I think it's a unicorn. It's like a mythical unicorn. It doesn't exist. What was even a full stack engineer apparently knows all of that, and they know C, and they know embedded coding. You know, they can do anything, and there are people like that. But you know, just they want to hire those people. It's no small feat. Ha! Why is jQuery so hated? I think it's because jQuery, just like I said, is a technology to unify all the JavaScripts that were all wrong, all different, and it's just old. Honestly, it's just old, and it serves a purpose that is not needed as much anymore. You're still going to find it a lot out there, and there's no reason not to use it other than its weight. It's gotten pretty thin these days. But that's my answer for that. It's not really, I don't know why we're getting sucked into all this JavaScript stuff, because she talked about it kind of early. It's really not appropriate to talk about all of this stuff before even getting into networking and stuff. What is the name of the book to learn JavaScript? It's called The JavaScript Way. Yep. The JavaScript Way from Baptiste, forget the name, but yeah, you can go look that up. PHP and JSP are the best backend frameworks. I use JSP. I gave a presentation to Nike about JSP. I told people that before, but are you going over web design in the sense of visual design? No, I'm going over web design in the sense of I'm reading the page one at a time and doing what it does. So that's what I'm talking about. And she actually, I'll tell you, kind of spoiler, she covers HTML, CSS, graphics, and a light dab of JavaScript. So there is some elements of visual design that are included, but it's not heavy on visual design. jQuery was a phenomenally amazing solution to a huge problem when it came out. And the reason it's getting bagged on so bad right now, including by me, is because it's irrelevant. I mean, almost all the problems that jQuery came out for have been rectified now by a sort of a unification between the standards in JavaScript and some kind of agreement between all the browsers. That was not the case when jQuery came out. jQuery was the only way to develop consistent websites that had JavaScript in them in any way, sites and apps. And so that's what's up about. Right through the embedded systems, right? Oh, do you? Wow, you're amazing. Yep. Facebook is still on LampStack. I think they are. LampStack, let's define that. LampStack is a wonderful old term. It's very close to my heart. It stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and at the time, Perl. But P has been replaced with PHP and Python many times. But those are the, MySQL is a database. Apache is a web server. We haven't even talked about what a client and a server is yet, so I don't know why we have to go down that right now. I think UI UX are mainly designers and don't know at least a little code. So teach them. Well, we were just talking about that. UI and UX these days, you have to know how to code if you're going to be a UI UX person, at least minimally. Well, browsers still need quirks, particularly for component-oriented design, which is what the React and the Vue stuff's all about. And the other one, oh, browsers still need quirks. Better use some framework if you don't want lots of ifs if you want to support any browser. Yeah, unless you use, unless you don't use anything fancy, which is fine with me. Serverless with Lambda, I agree. That's a big topic. That's not a beginner topic. Lambda is a service from Amazon that allows you to save writing server-side programs, like we talked about, by writing those programs on an Amazon service and then just kind of putting them inside of your application using an approach called Jamstack, which is all not beginner material. All right, so Dunk on jQuery weren't there when we had to use it. Oh God, yeah. I was definitely there, and I'm one of them. There are newer ways to do it, but it really saved us all, did it not? It really did. I still think there's a reason to learn it. I don't teach it, but I think there's a reason to learn it, particularly if you're going to go into web development, because the chance of you running into jQuery is pretty high. You know what I really like about jQuery too is how progressive it is. Progressive in the sense of if you need one little thing, you add one little thing. Done. You don't have to download Babel and create a compilation framework. Do you know what I mean? You just put the jQuery library in and add your widget. The end. It's like, I really love that because it doesn't require a big heavy duty development environment. And I think that's one reason people will still keep reaching for jQuery. I've had people that I mentor find jQuery on their own and say, oh, this is cool. I'm going to put a carousel here. And they use it. I'm like, well, okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So this has been a chat that I'm okay with doing a little bit of advanced tangents during the chat because those that are glazing their eyes over can go get a drink or go relax until we come back to the book. And I'm going to come back to the book now. Bootstrap is the new jQuery. No, that's not true. CSS Grid is the new jQuery. Yeah, unless you want to talk about look and feel of the buttons and stuff, which is why people still use Bootstrap. All right. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. All right. So, CSS Grid is the new Bootstrap. I just said that. Thanks, Harry. I think it's time for us to move on, people. What do you think? Look like get rid of the website out there. Yeah, it really is. It's the grab the shelf. Yeah. Flex or none. I know. Stop flexing. Okay, we're gonna get back to the topic here. No offense. I'm really enjoying the dialogue. You guys are doing great. Other roles. That's why we talked about it because we were talking about backend engineer and what that means and what a full stack developer is. So what she's doing here is she's giving you a sense of what are the jobs that involve web development. And as I said, I believe every job involves that now if it's in technology, even if you don't think it does. But she's specifically talking about the roles of a team that you might be working with if you had to learn HTML and be a designer. Product manager, the one that's ready to get it out. Project manager, the one who's going to crack the whip. I feel like this entire chapter is a little bit misplaced. This is really dated business management terms. Project manager is not as common anymore. It's there's agile practices and stuff. So this might be helpful for you to read, but don't stress on it if you need to skip it. SEO specialist. If you want to be a snake oil salesman, you can be a snake oil. The SEO person is the one that does everything in their power to make sure that you get the highest possible ranking, which includes not linking out to external resources so your rank will go up. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. I can't talk about that rationally right now. SEO is one of the things that's killing our internet. It's encouraging people to follow development practices that are fundamentally against the reason the web was invented. The web wasn't invented to lock you in your your eyes and your attention into the website as long as possible. The web was designed to push you outward, to consider multiple opinions, to promote your critical thinking by looking at several resources scientifically. It wasn't designed to trap your attention and get a better ranking in Google's search results. Google is evil and they are destroying the web and they don't even care. And yet they're the one who has the #1 browser. I don't know. It's a real contrary and kind of thing. It's a real, what is the word? Dilemma. And not everybody there is bad, but they make 95% of their money off marketing still and selling you to everybody else. And as long as they do, they're still evil. The end. Multimedia producers. One of the cool things about the web is that you add multimedia elements to a site, including sound, video, animation, and interactive games. You know all about this, right? So that's good. This concludes our stroll through a virtual village of workers involved in a creation of a website. The larger the site, the more likely each team member will have a narrow specialization of a job title like UX lead for blah, blah, blah. That's probably good that you would know about that. I suspect that has a lot to do with the organization of Mozilla at the time this book was written, because that's where she's writing it from. Soft skills every web designer needs. This again, I cover this stuff in Good to Gig. I don't want to recover it here. I don't think she hits it hard enough here. Obviously, you need good communication skills, flexibility, critical thinking, and a good attitude. All right, gearing up for web design. Checking the text here and see where we are and checking our time. All right, we're going through this pretty good. Let's see, corporate design, but also easy to implement a corporate design. It sometimes goes both ways. Yes. I never get seen. I give up. What did you say, Bit, that I missed? You just have to wait until we go to the chat and then save your stuff, like I said at the beginning. Let's see here. Nah, mate, never give up. We can chill. Share with the world. We'll always be stuck with the monetization model unless we make the infrastructure publicly owned and operated. Yeah. Well, I don't. There are other ways. The other way is for you to actually pay for the services you use. Nobody wants to do that though. A dated textbook when they say multimedia. I agree, Sinner. I agree with that. It's kind of silly. I mean, it's, I think it's still the most appropriate term, but it does say kind of weird, right? Multimedia, design. What's a more modern word? Huge amount of people would oppose. I try not to think about it because it just makes me. Yeah, we're not gonna see the end of that. It's gonna always be corporate interest that's gonna be driving this. That's just the way it is. I don't see. I mean, look, we even lost phones. Phones were largely that's a rabbit hole. Not gonna do it. See how I caught myself there. Equipment. So gearing up for web design. What does it take to be a web developer? So you need a computer. You need how to use a computer. It is true that Mac people tend to be web developers more than the others, but that's less true now than it's ever been in history. In fact, at this point, I would strongly suggest against purchasing a Mac. It's just a waste of money unless you're planning on doing something that can only be done on a Mac, which these days is nothing. The only thing that Mac does better than everybody else, they still have one of the better interfaces out there. I completely agree with that. This is a guy who spent over 60 grand on Macs for my school and stuff. I know Mac, and the other big thing that they are really good at is sound engineering. They are so good. Their sound stack is so really great for DJing and sound. I've done a lot of that, and not a lot, but enough to know that they still dominate on that front. Other than that, no. Web design, web development, and illustration and stuff like that, and Adobe stuff, they all run better on Windows these days. And you don't believe me, go watch the YouTube video of people who are throwing Macs out and paying half the money, getting twice the power, and they're just done with Mac. Don't give Apple your money, man. Microsoft is a better company than Apple. A large monitor, although not a requirement, a large monitor makes sense. 2 monitors, right? It's usually a good idea if you're going to become a pro to have one of each device or something. You're not supposed to be programming for the devices, but it does sort of make you feel better when you can actually see it on your phone. And you can do all of that development at the same time. A second computer for testing. Yep. Not necessarily, but you might want a server for that. Mobile devices for testing. That's what I mentioned. A scanner or a camera, for sure. You probably have a camera. Your camera on your phone is fine for most of your development needs. If you're going to be, like my wife, if you're going to be doing high resolution work, you're going to need a scanner. But none of that is required for the level of development we're going to be doing. Web production software, just say no. Just say no, people. You do not need web production like Dreamweaver or any of these things. You don't need it. Run Windows on your Mac. You guys know about this, right? This is really, really dated. I mean, this is really dated. Um, so I'm going to talk about this because she mentioned it. The common thing to do these days is to get a Mac, I mean a Windows machine, get the latest version of Windows, and run a WSL on it. In fact, the reason that Windows Subsystem for Linux was invented was so that this kind of development that used to be on Mac only could be done on Windows. These days, you can run a server, and preview all your stuff more easily on a Windows machine than you can a Mac. Do you need to understand virtual machine software? Yes, but not to be a web developer. You're not going to need to do this for any of the stuff that we're doing. So just disregard all of this. Not only is it not even take into account containers, which if you don't know what they are, containers are kind of cousins of virtual machines that are much lighter weight, and just know that there's other stuff. So just, you don't even need that box. That doesn't even need to be in the book. I have no idea why that's even in the book. Here's a general overview of the types of software that compromise the tools of our trade. All right, let me go back and read the comments really quick. The modern word for multimedia, Skinner box. M1 chip. Yeah, and the M1 chip is a pretty amazing achievement in ARM technology, but so the biggest problem with Apple is that when they do make a breakthrough like that, I'm left wondering, why do I care? I'm going to have to pay twice as much money for your M1 chip to get the same thing I can get on a Linux or a Windows machine. It's like, why did you disregard the opinions of every one of your developers and decide to make a big, monstrous office space that nobody wanted to use that's scientifically proven to be less effective for employees to use? The level of hubris at Apple is going to tank them eventually, and I have no love in my heart for that company. I use an iPad occasionally, and I like it, but anybody else could make one. So that's a rabbit hole, but we're in chat mode, so I can entertain a few rabbit holes here. I'm reading through a write-up from the 2003 that mentions MP3 players. Right, exactly. Not reasonable doing iOS development without a Mac. Nope. If you're doing iOS development, you must have a Mac. But then you have to ask yourself, why are you doing iOS development? So if you want to buy into that idea, then do it. Go for it. Why were Macs popular for web development before? Macs are super popular because of their terminal. So long story short, Steve Jobs, after he got kicked out of his own company for spending too much money, which was a legitimate reason, by the way, and got really depressed, and he looked around and said, what can I do that's going to dominate the world? So he went in, he created Pixar to make 3D and dominated. And he said, we need to make workstations, which are these $10,000, really high power Unix systems, because Silicon Graphics was dominating, and they were what, the 3D stuff was being built on. Created Next Computer, which he stole BSD, straight up stole it. Its own words. Stole BSD, said, I'm going to put BSD in a machine. I'm going to call it Next Computer, put a fancy output thing. Everybody's going to want one. It totally worked. Everybody wanted one. He made lots of money. And Apple screamed because they were trying to make an operating system in Pascal at the time. True story. Gil Amelio was trying to make app, and he was crashing and burning, and everybody was eyeing them for the real estate. Those are Brian Cantrell's words, which I really love. And then what? They said, Steve, please come back. So they said, Steve, I'm coming back. I can't come back. I'm not coming back unless I can bring Next with me. So he brings Next Computer back. And from that time forward, all Macintoshes, all Apple computers had Unix as the core, had Linux as the core, BSD, Linux. And they renamed it Darwin because it was the next evolution of BSD. They haven't once given credit to the BSD project, which is a violation of the terms of the license agreement. They don't care. They throw their money to the wind. And now you have the great and powerful Apple. And the reason that all developers use it is because they love BSD. All these Mac users don't even know they're using BSD. The reason they love Mac so much is because they love BSD Unix. That's what they love. They don't love Mac. They love BSD Unix. And they don't even know that's what it is. Oh, it's Windows. It's Microsoft's. It's Apple's amazing thing. So that's a true story, and that's why Macintosh kicked Windows butt, because you can't do that. You can't. There's no powerful command line. You had to. They still, for a long time they didn't have one. This is also why Microsoft's like, and then they said, hey, we're going to do you one better. We're going to put Linux inside of our computers, and now you have WSL, and as you would expect, the developers are flocking to WSL 2 over using a Mac, because now they have all that power. And meanwhile, Mac's like, ooh, we can't do this and this and this and such because it's open source and they won't let us. That's why they changed out from Bash to Z Show. So you asked the question, that's the answer. The developers love Mac because they love Unix. And they got Unix in a Mac for free. They didn't even know it. Some did. And they've been the whole Ruby movement, the Ruby on Rails and everything was all driven. It was like really, really pro Mac, and it was all driven because of the terminal. And eventually Microsoft's like, wow, we have to have a more powerful terminal option here. So they invented PowerShell, and then they started putting Linux on their computers. And now they're taking back over, and Apple's dying. Apple's losing out. But meanwhile, Linux, Pop! OS and Linux and Mint and everything, Arch, all of that, all the Linux users are just laughing at everybody else because they can just totally own them. So hopefully that was succinct enough. I don't know if the book or Rob's going to mention it, but I always try to go from mobile resolution to large. No, that's an old school. You don't need to do that anymore. That's not what responsive design is anymore. That's an old idea, Theodore. I appreciate you saying that, but that is something that used to be taught and is not. You just want to do responsive design right now, which means you don't want to think about big or small, small or big. You just can go. It does talk about that, but you really just want to make it look. It doesn't matter what your approach is. You just want to make it look good on everything. The rise of risk. I agree with that. I agree that M1 is foreshadowing of the rise of risk, but that's not uniquely Apple. If anything, I think NVIDIA is going to destroy everybody. But the first time NVIDIA comes out with a computer, mark my words, on December 20th, 2020 at 2 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Rob predicted that NVIDIA will eventually create their own computers. I'm going to predict it right now. I'm going to predict it, and I think they're on their way. The way that they're buying everybody out, they have all the power. All the power is literally in the GPU right now, and they now own ARM and all of the rest, and they are going to they could cut everybody off. Okay, it's a different topic. It's kind of a rabbit hole. Yeah, I'm really waiting for the great risk chip. Yeah, it would. Yeah. The NVIDIA PC would completely disrupt the market. It would just go nuts. Yeah, China has GPU-powered motherboards. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And NVIDIA owns the GPU market. They own CUDA. They own AI. They own everything. NVIDIA is the most powerful tech company that is the slumbering giant right now that owns everything. It owns everything on the hardware side. All the stuff that really matters. And they got it. Yeah. I don't know, man. You mark my words, it's going to happen. The word hubris. I love the word hubris. I say it a lot. So does Mark Hamill as Luke. What do you think about the promise of some software designers can do everything, including editing? I think the 10x kind of idea. I do think I've seen 10x engineers, and I think that's true. Add with the yoga, practicing project manager. Yeah. Well, BSD Linux. Did I say BSD Linux? Please tell me I didn't say that. Did I say BSD Linux? Did I actually say that? I'm so sorry. BSD is not Linux. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. BSD Unix. Well, shoot me and I say it. I shouldn't say it. I don't want to confuse people. Okay. BSD Unix. Of course it's not Linux. That's just me not paying attention to my words. They do have trigger modes. Yep. I think Microsoft will build a custom chip too. Yeah, I do too. China has GPU powered motherboard. I tell you who's going to be out in the cold is Intel. Intel, who had to license AMD technology in order to keep relevant. They're in trouble, man. Intel is in big trouble. This is kind of a 2-hour break here, so some of this will be cut out or something, but I'm just going to take a break. I think I might actually go walk around for a bit before we return. What OS would an NVIDIA computer run? Don't know. We talked about that. Can't wait for RISC-V. Yep. CMS would never take over. WordPress is the closest designers we get. I don't know what that's relevant. No, WordPress is, yeah, that's dead. Technology, well, never mind. That's not dead. 50% of the world runs on it. So quantum computing emulation, yeah. I say it a lot. I'm sorry. Twice I said it. Damn. What makes WordPress so popular? Because it's easy. It's easy and it's cheap. You go in there and fill in a bunch of blanks and anybody can do it. I know that because I've actually had contracts with people, and instead of like making them something that they would never have anybody maintain because they didn't do it themselves, I said, look, let me teach you WordPress instead. Pay me to teach you WordPress or Wix. And I would teach them those things, and they would learn. They could have their own thing. You know, the reason WordPress and Wix are going to be around forever is because they cater to people who are non-technical. Wix is amazing. Have you ever used? Has anybody ever? You guys should use the Wix interface. It is absolutely brilliant. You can literally visually resize what's going to be on your page and everything. It's amazing technology. But it's not going to be. Not everybody's going to be making a Jamstack website and deploying to GitHub. There's going to be a bunch of people going to still use graphic interfaces, and I would argue that most of the internet still is going to do that. They're not going to learn HTML. So, I think Stream would rather talk about hardware and low-level OS stuff. At this point, we are, and I kind of brought it up. We're kind of on a tangent right now, but we're on a break. We're going to be returning from this break, in case you're wondering, and you want to stick with us back on the hardware stuff. We got talking about Apple. Somebody specifically asked about why developers. We were talking about developer tools and hardware, and that's what got us on this, in case you're wondering. No joke, the next DGX is going to be ARM. Oh yeah, for sure. The fact that they bought ARM and Mellux means that they own the whole hardware market from the data center completely. Not to mention the entire AI market. Yeah. They own CUDA, they own TensorFlow. You can't have a TensorFlow without NVIDIA. So they own it all, man. I'm telling you, and not only that, they own Bitcoin mining. They own Bitcoin mining because GPU prices are going up, right? Because you can't even get a GPU for your computer because it's been overpriced because now the miners want them instead, so you can't put them in your computer to run your video effects. You have Cyberpunk come out and you have the whole console thing where they had to pull it because it's not powerful enough. NVIDIA's like, what you really need is you need to get a PC with an NVIDIA to play Cyberpunk properly. Cha-ching! I'm telling you. NVIDIA, if you had stock, man, if I had money to pay for stock, I would pay every cent in NVIDIA. NVIDIA's going to go, they're going to announce a computer, I swear. You watch. AMD is getting, Z-Linux is also a move spurred by NVIDIA, I'm sure. They now have an ARM company, which sadly, yeah. Good open discussion break, cool. They're fun, aren't they? Riley to go on. I look, if I seriously, I mean, I've watched technologies a lot over the years, and I don't think I've ever seen one company have such a corner on the market. Everybody has to bow down to NVIDIA right now. What company? Apple has to bow down to NVIDIA to put their chips on, even with the M1. All of the other PC providers have to bow down to it. Google has to bow down to NVIDIA because without NVIDIA, no TensorFlow, no big data. You can't have big data without NVIDIA. And I mean, you can have big data, obviously, but NVIDIA has really locked up the AI big data thing because of TensorFlow and CUDA. So yeah, the whole tech world is bowing down to NVIDIA right now. And now that they have ARM, I mean, they're geniuses. Whoever's running that company, they really know what they're doing. That's kind of a joke, Harry, right? You can't run it on Linux yet. I think they're going to do it. An hour into the stream, and we've already covered two of the nerd wars: AMD versus XSC, Mac versus everyone. Well, we always do. The nerd wars are always here. We're going to cover the editors next. That's why I made a segment just for editors. WordPress can be dangerous. Yes, absolutely. Don't use WordPress. Everybody does, but you shouldn't. Work for him. You have no idea how many times I've had to deal with people who've been hacked through WordPress. As I mentioned, hacked people with WordPress. And he wanted some simple JavaScript extension. He didn't know HTML basics, where to place it and how to use it. let alone the possibilities. There's an important point. You might not think you need this, but if you're a cybersecurity bug bounty kind of person, you need to learn all of this stuff. CSS, HTML. CSS is getting complicated enough that you can start to use it for parts of your attack. So, variables and stuff, right? So yeah. Yep. Have you seen the new ARM mainframes? I don't even want to. You just scared the hell out of me. You said ARM mainframe. That just, you know what? The reason I got all that Mac stuff, let me confess something to you. I was in New York with my wife and I was like, what is going on with ARM and Mac, ARM and Apple? And I was like, I thought at the time, and I was wrong, that Apple was going all in on ARM. And that meant that Apple was going to dominate the entire market. And it turns out NVIDIA was what I was talking about. NVIDIA buys ARM, swoops in, and now Apple says, can we please have ARM? Can we make a really fast ARM chip? Pretty please? So I guessed wrong on that one. But it was, I would never have guessed NVIDIA was going to come out of nowhere and just own everybody. Mm-hmm. Yeah, quantum, of course, is going to change everything. But in terms of traditional computing, enough stuff, maybe I can start a Hack the Box. Yeah, I love Hack the Box. I love Hack the Box. I miss it. I do. I miss all the beginning of the year. I tried to go into cybersecurity topics and realized that I wanted to be an engineer more than a bug bounty person, which is just a glorified tester. Increase in the last 6.5 years. Yeah, I'm telling you, buy NVIDIA. I just it feels so bad that I don't have the money to invest in them because they own it all. It's all about the graphics, but it's not just that. It's all about the GPU. The whole world is GPU obsessed right now. Everything is GPU obsessed. The entire blockchain industry is based on GPUs. And who's the GPU leader? Yeah. It's like, IBM has a free service where you can run your own quantum computer program in the quantum computer. Oh, really? That's cool. Yeah, with skewed incentives, I completely agree. And I used to think it was okay. I was kind of like, where's this industry going? What is this position about? Do I want to be a bug bounty person? Is it a sustainable way to make money? In truth, what it is people would rather pay. Whenever, people would rather pay 30 grand to find a bug rather than pay, $5,000 up front to stop the bug from happening in the first place. And I don't see that changing. I think I think this big hack we just saw is just proof of that. I don't know. Actually, that seems weird. I don't know. You tell me. I'm pretty sure though. Someone tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure TensorFlow is CUDA only. The programmers understand the code for the hardware, right? Quantum computer is a big race on right now for whoever can get the first quantum computer. Yeah, that goes without saying, but for sure. Cash in hand, right? The whole blockchain thing has problems that I'm trying to keep an open mind about, but the 51% attack, for example, because it's become snake oil. Yeah, I really sitting here. That's interesting. Because I kind of got a sense of that. The first time I saw Stoic say, "Look at all the money I made. I don't even know how to code, dude." I'm like, no. Nope, not interested. I'd actually rather build something. The other thing too is in order to do a lot of that bug bounty, you have to study old technology. And like PowerShell and stuff. I'm not interested. I'm all about the 0 days. AMD's response to CUDA. Yeah, I haven't seen that. That's cool. We'll have to look at that. Killtop, we'll have to have a look at that. Just very, very, very interesting chat going on here. I'm having a hard time tearing myself away. You can run a Vision system without CUDA 2, but you immediately lose 4K power. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. CUDA's locked it up. I mean, it's the thing about NVIDIA. And they're just playing nice enough to get people to stay on board, such as all the Linux participation, right? You guys saw that the whole NVIDIA the NVIDIA driver, what was the competing NVIDIA driver? That whole project just went belly up. All the people left. That happened like 4 months ago. I forget the name of it. What was the name of the driver that was the alternative to NVIDIA? the proprietary NVIDIA driver. There was an entire project in Linux to do that, and they just walked away. Most of the project team just left, and that left NVIDIA in charge of the driver, which, to their credit, NVIDIA has got a pretty great driver. They keep it up to date. They make great software to handle it. Nouveau, right. The Nouveau team is just gone. They just evaporated. It was kind of sad. But I understand why. So that's kind of NVIDIA's strategy. NVIDIA's they're kind of like playing nice just enough. You know what I'm saying? Well, yeah. It's almost like NVIDIA knows they have to play nice to get people to be stuck on CUDA, to get people to be dependent on their driver, stuff like that. I don't even fault them for it. I just think they're playing business by the rules, and they've never tried to be anything else. They might be proprietary, but they're not pretending to be something else and then selling you out to somebody else for your privacy, like Google. It's a legit company. I would put all kinds of money in there if I could. There are probably some practices that they do that aren't good. What would suck would be to find out if there's some supply chain hacking going on from China in all the NVIDIA hardware. Like that article that came out with, right? The Bloomberg, the contested article from Bloomberg. That's the supply chain hacking, that they had video cards some sort of card had been compromised. So everybody had a little chip that had been put on the card. NVIDIA stuff at 256, this just year, right? Yeah. Yep. Lots of people are frustrated how locked down hardware is. Yep. Yeah, the devs just left. They were done. The tiny little chip that I was just going to say. That's the one I just said. I just talked about that one. Zero Day Initiative. Ooh, that looks good. I'll have to go run that down. If you find a vulnerable while at last place, you will take it to as a bug bounty. Right. Yeah, I love TrackMe, but no, I don't. I hate TrackMe. TrackMe is crap. I don't like TrackMe at all. Luke, I know you like it, but I don't. I'm just not a fan. I said so too, very, very vocally when I went through the first levels. The first level Linux stuff on TryHackMe is just so wrong on so many levels. It's horrible. I mean, it's just horrible. It tries to teach you the whole thing that teaches you Linux. Not to mention, it's not even English. Hack the Box though, I had a really good experience with. So, fake news. I don't remember to see. They kept saying it was fake news, but the sources, they never back down from their sources. So it's one of those things, That's a huge ongoing controversy as to whether it was true or not. Could it be done? Absolutely. Is there evidence of it? Yeah, they presented the evidence. From a budget from the UCSM, floated into UCLA for recruiting people for quantum. Yeah. There's a lot of them that get sat on behind closed door because they want to tip their rivals off the capability. Yeah, totally. All right, I'm going to actually stand up and make a physical break here. And when I come back, we'll go back to our book. And we have about an hour and a half left of this first session of this. I may or may not leave all of this chat in. I don't mind leaving the chat in as long as everybody knows that when they're fast forwarding through the video that, oh, it's just a bunch of chat, I can go to the end of it. Some of this stuff is very interesting. So even though it's not maybe related to what you want to do with web development, maybe it'll trigger some interest in you in Linux and hardware and that kind of thing. But please don't, please don't feel like you have to know all of this stuff to do web development. What's that? How the IC work would be really difficult to add some malware with some external chip. Yeah. All right. So you guys have fun talking for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and get up here. Do you guys have any music? Your music's dead. Is your music dead? Why am I orange today? I'm like orange today. Why am I orange? I'm like a different color somehow. Anyway. Let's get you some music. All right. Right back. Yeah, there we go. That's funny. You really are a dog then. You must have learned from her. Oh yeah, I can turn it off. You just heard me all about the dog. All right. Well, who wants to work at IBM? I do. Depends on what they're doing. IBM's got a really great job for a terminal UI developer in Go. I'm like, why are they doing that? Good stuff there. No clue what IBM is. True, that's true. IBM still runs most of the world, actually. People don't know it. All this stuff that IBM is in charge of is not stuff that you'll ever hear about. You'd be surprised. You know, there's a tremendous amount of the world that still runs on mainframe. Not to mention IBM Tech. They just don't talk about it. They don't know how to market very well. They suck. Yeah. All right, I'm going to switch the topic back to web development. And I really look orange today. I guess I'm just going to have to orange it. I'm going to have to orange it. I swear I'm not really this orange today. It's like something went wrong with my white balance. I do not know what. Who cares, right? Actually, let me try to... We're still on break, right? Let me just try and change one thing. Watching the guy play with his filters. Just what you came to watch, right? I don't know if that's better or worse. I don't know. Really, really orange to me right now. Anyway, cancel. I guess that's fine. It is what it is. All right. Let's go back to the document. And yeah, I was just going to say the government is where they are, not just here. I do kind of have a Trump tan. I don't like it. I didn't have it before. I don't know what's going on. Is it the light? I think it might be the light. I messed with the light a little bit. I do. I don't know what to do about that. You know what? I'm going to try. Well, I don't know if that's a good idea. All right, one last. You know what? You didn't want to do this slide, but I'm going to try anyway. I'm just like, that's like, no, that's not much better. I guess it's better. It's just shiny. I'm just shiny. Shiny. I don't know if I like that better. All right. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Told you we're on break still. How's that? It's kind of medium bright. All right. Enough of this. This is like very vain of me to do. I really apologize for that, but I just noticed myself there and it looked kind of weird. Are you ready to do this? I did. I know how to do this. I don't know why my white balance changed in the first place. That's what's confusing me. I didn't do anything. So, yeah. No, that just makes me pink. It was fine. I'll play with it later. It's not that bad. I mean, it might be that I'm just red because I drank vodka. That could be. It could be that I'm actually that red, that I really am that red. I know you guys are saturation. No, I'm not. I'm not messing with this. Oh God, how about that? Like a little bit. Whatever. Back to what you came for. At least it's not Trump. It is. It's better now, right? It's not as orange. Yeah. I mean, this is. I think that's what it was. I think it was the light was passing through something differently. Anyway. You know what? I thought about doing black and white. I used to. I thought about doing that at like Lundeke, right? Because why not? All right, back to the book. I'm going to put a mark in this, actually. So we have that. Oh, movie sound filter. Why not? All right. So this is why I had to take a big break before we got into this. And so the next section here is coding tools. And this is really important, knowing your tool set. And I'm going to introduce you to two coding tools. I talked about this before. Two coding tools that you can use that are online. You can just use these right away. But neither of them are truly, professional coding tools. They're more educational coding tools, which is your decision. But I think it's better to learn professional coding tools. And so I'm going to show you those right now, and those are not covered here. I'm going to put a little note here, like what about REPL.it and the CodePen.io? And I covered these the other night, but I have to cover them again because it's a new video now. So let's do that. So if you haven't seen it before, go out there with me, REPL.it. REPL.it. REPL.it stands for Read, Evaluate, Print Loop. And this is a service that was created. I won't give you the whole story. It was created to help people get up and running with coding as fast as possible. And it's like one of the number one educational resources when it's working. Unfortunately, it is down quite a bit. And it's very popular. So sometimes it's down because of that. And I have personally experienced a big problem with this, which you can go read about. Problem with REPL.it, which I wrote in The Best of Faith, and actually had a very lengthy exchange with Amjad, who's an amazing human being. His whole team, they're really great people. Unfortunately, I ended up going back and forth between a critical, position on it and not. But ultimately, it's a really great place to go test things out. It's a great sandbox. I think it's the best sandbox for web development, but you can code in any number of other 60 or so other languages, including esoteric weird languages like Lolcat and BrainF and all of that. So it's really great to test your coding chops. What it's really not good at is if you are in an educational capacity and you need to have 40 people learn to code and you get them all in there at the same time and they can't type a single keystroke because the internet is not allowing it. And so you can't have a class. And that happened to me while I had created a curriculum for a private school and was teaching it, and none of us could use it. So we had to scramble, and everybody had to install VS Code at home. And we did all of our development from that point on laptops locally, and we had no problem. We had no dependency on the internet. Occasionally someone would download an image or two from the internet, but we had no real-time dependency on the internet. The entire value proposition of REPL.it is that they are depending on the internet, and Amjad has said he's catering to iPad users and people like that. In schools in the United States, there's lots of people with iPads, and so they couldn't do any development anyway without internet access, and so they can use REPL.it where they couldn't do any development at all on an iPad, which is another huge problem and rabbit hole we could go down. I think it's one of the stupidest things in the world that Apple has convinced certain boards of education that they are actually good for kids to use and learn. It's not. They're not. They should be learning how to type. They should be learning how to actual code, and they should be learning on systems locally like everybody does every day, not how to do this. It's just a disaster. It's one of the many reasons I don't like Apple. And I actually helped with an Apple deployment for a middle school that actually Obama praised at one point. And But the problem was Apple had to give everybody screen, they had to give them screens to stop from looking so bad, because all the screens were breaking, because it was a disastrously bad idea to give a bunch of middle school kids brand new Air, MacBook Airs, and it's just whatever. So there, got my rant. Replit is a thing that you can use. If you want to make a new one, you click New Replit here. You click on HTML, CSS, and you can put your name here, some name, and you'll get a name. And you have this here. There's your code. It starts you out with code. You can add some script here, console.log. You can put like hello world, and then run it, and you get hello world down here. You can click over here, and you get the whole thing in its own web browser. And you can right click, inspect element, and you get console. There's your hello world. Okay, so that's Replit. Replit is a fantastic tool for development if you don't want to set anything up. The other tool that's really popular out there is CodePen.io, which is a showcase for web developers to show off what they know more than anything. It is also a place to look up things like, I want a cool button. So you search for buttons on CodePen.io, and you can find all kinds of crazy things. This is a fun one. And you can go see the code here. You can click on it, and you can copy and paste the code. FreeCodeCamp refers to this and has you use this for their final projects. Problem with this is, and this is a real bad problem, is that this doesn't teach you proper HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's not meant to be a learning tool. It's meant to be a way for you to showcase a particular snippet of web development. And so it's missing really essential things that Replit has, which was there's no body tag. It assumes that there's certain stuff wrapping this code here, and that's really bad if you're trying to learn, because you're not getting the repetition you need to learn all of those tags. They're just doing them for you, which is bad. I show it to you though because there is a lot of good stuff out here that you can go get ideas on as you go forward. So Replit and CodePen.io. And now we're going to talk about editors, and all of these editors that are mentioned here are editors that I've made a video separately about actually earlier tonight. You can go watch the video about what I think about them all and which one to use. She did finally put Visual Studio Code on here, which is what most people will probably be using. In previous videos, previous attempts at this video, I've used VS Code, and I'm not going to do that anymore. So I'm going to use the editor that I love and know, and that's Vim. And you will get the idea, and you can use it from your editor. If you need some help learning how to use your editor, we can try to find a way for you to use it. But using Microsoft Visual Studio is not very hard. Of all of these editors, if you want to use a graphic editor, I recommend Atom or Microsoft Visual Studio. Microsoft Visual Studio is hands down the #1 editor right now. And then use that. You might like Atom instead. It's up to you. Most shops though these days are using Microsoft Visual Studio for web development. You can download it, get familiar with it, set up your themes, whatever you want. If you do use Visual Studio, and I talked about this in the other video, you might want to consider something called VS Codium, like Chromium. And the reason for that is because all the Microsoft snooping and privacy violation has been taken out. Okay. So any comments on editors from the peanut gallery? JetBrains WebStorm. A lot of people love that. I talked about that in the video. VS Code, black and white. Yeah, pretty dated in this book. Can't remember when I used Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver is really old, but it's still out there. JS Fiddle is better. Oh God, no, it is absolutely not better. I strongly disagree with this statement about JSFiddle.net being better than Replit. Yeah, JS Fiddle doesn't give you a command line. Do you want me to go on? You get a full-blown Linux command line that you can access and do anything with on Replit. You don't get that with JS Fiddle, never will, because it's not based on containers. If you don't know what that means, just trust me, Replit is better. You can go make the comparison for yourself, but Replit is far better. Yeah, people do development on iPad, a lot of them. FreeCodeCamp, I guess I got to mention it. FreeCodeCamp is, since we're in question time, FreeCodeCamp is one of the most popular online free ways to learn to code. It was created by a guy who finished a boot camp and shortly thereafter said, hey, my first business will be creating a boot camp. And it's exactly what you would expect from such an endeavor. I think it's fantastic. I think their goals are great. I think their execution is less than poor for many reasons that I won't get into. Not the least of which is I put 40 people through the HTML program and not a single one can make a web page after it because it has poor, it just has overall it just has a horrible pedagogy. And I recommend against it. I don't think you should use it. Use the book that we're doing and go through and do your own projects. Even the creator himself says, when asked, is this enough to get me a job? Says, well, obviously this isn't enough to get you a job. You have to do a lot of other stuff. That said, after you go through the book, there's a lot of really good stuff, particularly in JavaScript here. It's a good community to connect with. There's a bunch of beginners who are trying to get started, and it's very motivational. And overall, the effort, I believe in the motivation and the effort of the whole group endeavor. I just think their execution is really horrible. That's my opinion. You asked. All right. So, yeah, Replit supports everything. CodeSandbox.io. Don't know of that one. That's the first time I'm seeing it. I would suggest that Replit's still going to be better. Plus, it's also integrated with GitHub if you want it to be. StackBlitz for fast prototyping. Don't know about that one. NanoGang, where are you? EdGang here. Yes, 2 yeets for EdGang. The nice thing about code is that you can preview LaTeX and Markdown, etc. About VS Code? Yeah. You don't need that though. I mean, you can definitely preview, but there are so many other ways to preview. That we haven't got even on that topic that I don't know what we're talking about yet. Let's see. Zulu King, Ed is too advanced. Just do cat to index HTML. Can I compile HTML to Android and iOS? No, you never would need to do that. The closest thing you're going to get is 1, a progressive web app, or 2, an Electron app. That's what Electron is. Electron is a bunch of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript put into an application. So Slack and Discord, that's what they are. At their core, they're web applications. Where is this PDF available? Wherever you can find it. And I'm not going to tell you where because it's illegal for you to have it unless you pay for it. I paid for mine. So, I'm sorry. I like to use open Creative Commons material, but in this particular case, this is the best resource. Therefore, I'm using it. There's nothing even closely comparable to this on the web. So far that I've found, and believe me, I've spent time looking. If you find something, please let me know. And I'm gonna justify that statement in a minute because we're gonna cover some stuff in part 1 that's not covered anywhere else on the internet, at least not in an organized way. AWS offers a fun combo with Cloud9. No, just no. No. I know exactly what we're talking about. Cloud9. That we tried to use that for a while, and then it just went belly up. Yeah, just don't use that. The Odin project. Yeah, the Odin project is really great and also irrelevant in many ways. There's a lot in the Odin project that I don't even cover. There's nothing in the Odin project at all about accessibility that I saw the first time I reviewed it. So I love the Odin project. I'm subscribed. I'm a member of their Discord, and it's a great project. It's a really good one to get connected with. But none of that will beat the textbook of a professional who has gone through this material. If you think you can learn it free online, great, go for it. But I think it's better to stick with a trustworthy textbook that is used by. It's out of date in many areas, but in many other areas it's not. Do I love React? No, I don't love React. React Native is an option, but there are many other ways to do that. If you're going to try to make something into a native app, yeah. What's the other one that people use with Vue and React? Spacing on it right now. It's not Ionic. It's the other one. We're still in chat mode, so if you don't understand what I'm saying, that's okay. I'm answering specific questions. No, don't use PhoneGap. PhoneGap is ancient. PhoneGap is so old. PhoneGap is, yeah, that's not even PhoneGap anymore. It's it got named another thing and now it's completely irrelevant. It can be done, but those are technologies. Yeah, Cordova. Yeah, but Cordova is not even real anymore. Cordova is completely ancient too. Nobody does that. There's another one that's popular for Vue, as well as React. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's not Capacitor, no. It's not Vue either. It's we're working through it's name in the title. We're working through learning web design. It's used as actually, yeah. All right, so let's keep going. Back to the textbook. If I remember what that is, I'll let you know. There is another, basically, this is another reason to learn web development because it applies, you can do native development. It's not Svelte. No, Svelte's a good one though. Why can I cannot remember. You know what? Since we're still in chat mode, I have to find this. This is going to drive me crazy. I have to remember what it is. Building a Vue application into a native app. It's not just Vue. The really good thing about this one is it does Vue and everything else. Nope. I'll know it when I see it. That's it. What is that? This thing right here. Whatever this is. I recognize it anywhere. That's their logo. Cordova is old. You don't want that. MDB, no. 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 Vuetify was really popular for a while. No. No. Where is it? They just had a picture of it. Did I skip it? I'm sorry guys for the delay. We'll skip this. It's not React. NativeScript. NativeScript. That's it. NativeScript. Yeah. This is the one. So this is my recommendation. I haven't done anything really significant with it, but I like where it's going. So create native iOS and Android apps without JavaScript. The really great thing about this is it's not specific to any framework. React Native is. So you can use anything. That's what they're mentioning over here. This is way newer than Cordova and PhoneGap, which is the new Cordova. So somebody was asking about how to make native apps out of web stuff, and that's why we're on. But that is way, way far beyond what we want to cover for just these beginners here. Great beginners that we have. So we're going to go back to the beginners. NativeScript, thank you for finding it. Flutter is apparently really good too, but it's Dart. Yep. Ember is still popular. Ember is still a great tool if you don't mind server side. Updates for PhoneGap in August 2020. Really? That would be nice. Newfangled. PhoneGap is really old. PhoneGap is like 10 years old. So no, PhoneGap is 8 years old. So anyway, if it still works, great, right? Who is the author of the book? Jennifer Robbins. Learning Web Design, 5th edition. All right, I'm going to go back to the book now, and I'm going to turn off the chat. I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just going to have to come back to the chat. This is exactly what I was predicting. Nothing wrong with this. I just want to make sure that I can focus on this stuff. Cron is a mobile Lua. That's a different thing, right? Cordova is what I was talking about. Writing a mobile app in JavaScript, you're doing something wrong. Yeah, it depends on what the mobile app is, right? I don't think any mobile to native is a thing anymore. I think you should either do a progressive web app or a straight up native app. That's my personal position on this. Right now, my personal position is either all you need is a progressive web app, and you have to know what that is, or you need a full blown native app, which means you should code in the language of the phone or device that you're targeting. I'm not a fan of all the intermediate methods now that we have progressive web apps, because I believe that covers 90% of the cases where you would actually want an app. And it also means you don't have to deploy to an app store. And that's a big problem. We are way down the road there though. That is like not new stuff. Is written in TypeScript. Yeah. The VS Code Tinder mobile app is written in TypeScript. Yeah, well. Apple has discontinued PhoneGap. Yep, but I think Cordova is still a thing. Back to HTML. Yes, great. Thoughts on Note? God, no, not right now. You're just joining us, fell asleep, obviously. So I'm going to let you catch up. We're talking to beginners here. So we're going to focus on this book for the next 2 hours. Actually, next hour. And make as much progress as we can on the book. And Vera, I'm welcome, but please keep it, let the beginners. I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning of the streams for lots of our new people that aren't here before we get into it. Okay. This from midnight to 4 a.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is for beginners. That means beginners should feel welcome. They should be able to speak and feel like they're not going to have their comments scrolled off the screen. And it means that they should be respected and they shouldn't be made to feel that everyone else is smarter than them. So if you're here to flex, you're in the wrong place right now. I love playing with you guys and flexing and debating everything. This is in the right time for that. So if you just respect that, this is also the reason I'm going to be turning the chat off now, and I'm going to go back to the book, and then I'll come back to the chat. You guys can have all kinds of fun while I'm not here. But when I turn the chat back on, let's please give the priority to the people who might have questions about what we're doing, and not advanced things like native script development, stuff like that. This is a beginner topic. We're in the first chapter of the first book. Okay. I am a beginner and I am bored. He said my favorite words. I am bored. All right. So, well, they probably aren't beginners, but the fact of the matter is that this stream is not for whoever's in my Twitch. This stream is going to be recorded and put on YouTube and put on Vimeo. And I welcome to have a live studio audience, and I welcome you guys to be here, but I am not here for you. You are here to participate if you want to participate, and I'm telling you the rules. The rules are that right now, this is for beginners. Okay? Thanks. So, I need another Twitch mark. We definitely do. Twitch mark. Back to book. All right. Thank you, Akago. So we're going to go ahead and turn this off, and I'm going to turn this off so I can come back to the book here. All right, I'll be back though. Don't worry. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. And I'm not completely orange anymore, which is always a good thing. God help me if I start looking like Trump. Whoopsie. I said something political. User interface and layout tools. I've never used any of these, and I'm not even going to talk about them. If you want to use these things, great. My favorite drawing tool, as I've used on the stream a lot, is the completely free draw.io. See if I can find it. You can go out and find draw.io, which has got a new name now. I think it's diagrams.net. Here we go. So here's a Restream service. This is a tool I was using earlier. It's completely free. You can actually download it as an app. It's an Electron app, in case you were wondering. Just like Slack and Discord and all the others. Atom, Microsoft VS Code, they're all Electron apps. And so there you go. That's this is a thing that you can do, and you can make diagrams if you want to kind of spec out your web page. So back to the book. So there apparently are some other tools that I've never used and I don't intend to use because I just use paper and pencil too. That's the thing. Paper and pen. Just draw it out and then throw papers away when you don't like them, because paper goes into the landfill just fine. And it's not going to hurt anybody. There's no arsenic in it. It doesn't have to be high tech. High tech can get in the way sometimes. Web graphic tools, creation tools. You definitely need GIMP, and she talks about it. GIMP is the free open source version. Even it runs on Windows as well now. And then there's Inkscape, which I love. I love Inkscape. I made an entire Yu-Gi-Oh style card game in Inkscape for my kids and I, called Battleforge, which the idea got stolen and turned into a video game. Long story there. I'll save you another day. And Corel Paint Shop Pro, fine. If you want to use images, a lot of times you can just get them from the internet, but we don't need to talk about that tool very much. A variety of browsers. Okay, so I'm just going to cut to the chase. Even though I use Firefox for my own browsing and stuff, and I've used Brave in the past, and I've stopped using it. I never use Safari unless I am forced to. It's just got so many problems. Opera's nice. It just doesn't have support. Internet Explorer is not a thing anymore. This is really out of date. She did put Edge in here, which is good. So Edge is actually Chromium inside. So Edge and Chrome are identical practically. They just have different wrapping. So Firefox and Chrome, hands down, the internet is running off of Chrome, as I just showed you guys in the usage earlier. So in the usage right here, we showed that 36.8% of all web browsing is Chrome on an Android. And then the other big chunk is Chrome on the desktop. So Safari has a smaller percentage, and that's fine, but we're talking about 9%. So, it's like, I'm just saying, you want to be developing for Chrome. Chrome has better dev tools, in my opinion, which is sad to say because the author of this book works for Mozilla, at least did when the book was made. And I agree with many of the Mozilla ideals. They've stepped out of bounds a couple times with the Mr. Robot thing and a bunch of, but as an organization, they seem to be okay. I do think they've lost their way a little bit because they got kind of big, but whatever. But Chrome and Chromium are really the web browsers to use for development because their developer tools are just so superior. I don't really feel like debating that right now. So if you don't agree, that's fine. But I'm just telling you the facts. All right. You'll also need to test on a variety of smartphones and iOS. Yes. Third-party browsers. This is always the point where somebody chimes in and says, you can do all that in your web browser. And I'm going to say, no, you can't, because the emulations in the web browser are not, they don't match pixel for pixel for what would actually be on the devices they claim to represent. This has been a problem over and over that I run into. So the better thing to do is to just not design for any specific device, and to just design for, other than compatibility. I think that's the real issue. I do seriously think that, in fact, it does worry me that she has not mentioned once the use of can I use in this entire manual. And that kind of worries me because that really is the place to go to make your decision about what you can and can't use. And I just can't imagine doing web development without it. What about can I use? Is it .org, I think? I'm putting this there so I can remind myself. All right, so we get down to file tools, file transfer. You don't need to mess with file transfer tools right now, at least for the sake of this. Most of the time, and she doesn't talk about Git at all. I'm going to put here, what about Git? And because that's how most code is published these days. And, nobody uses, a couple of people have said they use automated FTP transfers and stuff like that, but those are really old methods of publishing. What about Git? The more modern method to publish, which is built into VS Code, is to click on a button and say synchronize, and it will push your code up to what's called a repository, where it is then either staged or deployed automatically using something called continuous integration or continuous deployment to the website. And that is the common method of publishing today. So all of these fun little toys for transferring files to different systems are kind of irrelevant. And frankly, I don't think you should use them anyway. It's way better to use the command line, as she tells you here down with bash, and then just use a command called scp to transfer files when that is needed. You don't need to do any of this file transfer stuff at all for this entire book. So I think this is more of a preparation for how you're going to, tools that you're going to need in the future. But I don't remember anywhere in the book, I could be wrong, but I don't remember anywhere in the book where we actually do that. In fact, it looks like she added a chapter here in chapter 20, modern web development tools. We use the terminal and Cygwin. So this stuff here is like, the 1990s wants its tools back. Seriously, when's the last time anyone's used FileZilla? Anyone? It's like, I remember it. It was in the browser FTP transfer, and I did use FTP to transfer before I knew about SCP secure copy, and before I knew about Git, Git and Git commits. So the modern method of publishing has really radically changed, and I kind of want to take you through that method right now just to give you a demonstration of the tools involved. And since we're at the end of this book and we're on the exercises, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to look at the chat, and then I'm going to give you a very quick whirlwind example of the fastest way to publish using the tools that are already out there right now, without getting really deeply into the tool called Git, which can sometimes be confusing for beginners. But I want to tell you about the most common practice for publishing, so you can know about it if you want to publish your stuff. But just know that we are not going to be doing a lot of publishing going forward. All right, so I'm going to go to the chat, and then I'm going to show you how to do that publishing with on the service directly. Apple visitors pay big bucks. IT departments are buying Apple computers for their staff. Yep. Yeah, it's often Lenovo or Dell. Apple, you're paying. Yeah, name. Yep, we talked about that. Lenovo is ugly logo. Git would come later in a more advanced section. I think so too. We're not going to cover Git right now. Dell does a lot better job in the contracting. Yes. Git is a different category. Yes. tar-c SCP. Well, fine, but that's advanced. Rob, I use FileZilla only on Windows. On Linux, we don't need that. That's probably true. That's fair. I mean, on Windows these days though, you can run WSL2, and so conversation is probably still relevant, but more and more that's not a thing. When SCP is not relevant. No, it is not. No, it's not. Not relevant. Not anymore. Not with WSL. WSL2 is fully integrated into your whole system. So if you're using WSCP, it's because you're on a really old version of Windows. Is this the Odin Project? No, this is not. Odin Project is relatively good though, so it's something to look at. IE is still very much a thing if you're working with the government enterprise contractors. Yeah, I don't know about that. You have to tell me the specific enterprise customer. I worked for IBM and I remember some of them, and no, we were okay not to use it anymore. Read my Apple comment. I did. I don't like Apple. I already bagged on Apple plenty myself. So 15 minutes late, and we were going over what we did yesterday. No, I'm repeating it because I want to go through it faster and I want to separate the chat. Sorry guys, what book is this? Just read the title. When SCP is very relevant, that's how our marketing uploads images to the server. If someone knows how a better tool for non-technical users to transfer files, please let me know. All right, you got me on that one. Okay, so help me understand that. I want to talk about that for a second. That's a really good insight. So you have non-technical people who are transferring files using WinSCP to an internal host that's running SSH servers. That's very, very good insight. That's a very good insight. Yep. That's a good insight. Thank you for that. We rock WinSCP. You guys use it too. Wow. How many? We have a lot of people here that are using WinSCP. Really? Wow. All right. Well, I stand corrected. I've never worked with a team that does that, so it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Obviously, you guys are doing it all the time. I actually think that's a great alternative. FileZilla was the thing that we used to use for that kind of thing. But these days, I figure people would just know SCP, but if they're non-technical, they don't want to touch a terminal. So your graphics people are doing WinSCP transfers, right? So not just because it's instant for Draw.io, you can see to save the diagrams as SVG files. Right, that's nice. That's cool. I did not know about that, Private Orange. I was using WinSCP for my website. Pretty easy with the sync button. Okay, so that's another WinSCP fanboy. There's a lot of Apple fanboys, and that's fine. I still like you. I just despise Apple. I'm curious about what is the solution to publishing. The solution to well, I believe the Jamstack is the solution to publishing, but that's just me. What just works is you get a program that does too many things together, when I find really overwhelming and too bloated. On Linux, you just need what you want and use, and you can mix small programs together. Yeah, agree. The government employer just started using Chrome as a default browser for internet use. Nice. That's been my experience. Is that I have not ever run into a government account that's using IE. Even back in the days that, I mean, to be fair, wasn't in the desktop support team at that time. So I'm cracking you up over here. Why? Because I'm all of a sudden being okay with WinSCP. Look, that's why I have a community. FileZilla here to let Unity people upload side binaries to S3. Really? All right, I'm going to write that down. These are all really great insights. Thank you very much. So FileZilla, to let them upload to S3. Is there anybody else doing WinSCP to S3 buckets? S3 bucket is a storage technology that is run by Amazon, in case you don't know, where you can store things that then become part of websites and other things. Non-technical, inexperienced people access sensitive areas. Good point. Yeah, I would. The process that when I was involved with the process, it was usually, to be honest, it was that was a long time ago. But it was mostly image transfers over email, frankly, because it's web stuff, and then those images would come to me, and then I would update them. But that's not a sustainable practice. So if you have somebody using a bucket and you're sending stuff with WinSCP and FileZilla, I could see, and that's one case where we would use FTP as well. So using bare FTP on my Linux, WinSCP was working fine on Windows. FileZilla is okay. I also had to use and teach FileZilla for media transfers when I was working with a few travel agencies. Interesting. Because they don't know how to do file transfers at all, right? Yep. So it sounds like FileZilla and WinSCP are still in use out there. That's really cool. I don't use them at all. But we have graphics design people and other non-IT people sort of need to put files on servers. Yeah. I genuinely want to know about it. I don't. I thought for sure that would be a part of them having a Git repo checked out with VS Code, and they could drag those files in there and click a commit, and then they'd have a commit, and then they could do a pull request. I mean that's how I would do it. VS Code has Git built into it, so it's just a matter of getting them to configure the VS Code. But if you have people that only deal with images, VS Code with Git involved might not work, right? It might be too much. But that's my solution. My solution is that everybody works from the same Git repo or a staging repo, and then they put those things in there using VS Code. You can drag files in VS Code into the image file area, and it'll show that you can commit, and you can click commit, and they can sign their name to the commit, and that data that'll get staged for you automatically, and it'll go in a version tracking system so you can tell who made all the changes and stuff. I can't imagine doing that, which is file transfers. But I understand that there are some people who doing that VS Code thing would also still be unable to do that. But that's the way I've helped people kind of do that. That's what they do, because then that way they don't have to deal with the command line for Git. And VS Code covers that very well. Brave browser because the Chromium backend. I used to, but I don't anymore. This is a good conversation here. There were some scandals on Brave. Yeah, I'm not a Brave fan anymore. I was. Yeah, they don't take privacy seriously at all. Brave says they do. They're just slip service. Images are all HD now. Not coming for 100 plus megabyte images. Why would you have a 100 plus megabyte image in HD? I guess that's true. I guess you know what? You got me on that one. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine when I used to work with like really large, when I was working with the Nike.com design team, they had fiber, by the way, in the 90s. They had fiber, their whole team did. And but exchanging things back and forth was a pain. And sometimes it was sneakernet sort of thing. So I feel like I've had my perspective widened here for the use of WinSCP and FileZilla, because as you say, file sizes are getting bigger, and you don't want that stuff anywhere near a Git repo if it's that big. But we are talking about web development here, and web development shouldn't have 100 plus megabyte files at all. They shouldn't be anywhere. So unless you're talking about the source of their files and you're doing the conversion of a larger file down to a smaller file, you see what I'm saying? So I think that's probably why I didn't make the connection rather use WinSCP, you would build a web app to minimize the attack surface. You could do that. You could definitely do that. Netcat for my file transfers. I keep using Git for file management. Git is not geared for binary files. Sure it is. It's fine. Yeah, and it has large file support. So, but explaining Git branches to the art department sounds like a strange fantasy. I agree with that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about, yeah, I see what you're saying. But Git is not a big Dropbox. And I see your point. It works with the developer, but I mean, this is a really valid point. So WinSCP and FileZilla for that sort of thing, I think makes a lot of sense. It does leave the question, well, where are you going to store everything? You probably have some sort of file store someplace like, and in that case, you might as well make an FTP access to the thing as well, and then just do FTP if they have an FTP client, right? So how many? Look, I'm not in the enterprise right now, so let me ask, how many of you actually have teams that have file stores that are specifically for large files that are related to dropping in from art department and stuff like that as a part of your process? It sounds like there's at least 3 of you who have that as part of your process, and I really appreciate your insight on this. Yeah, hell, I don't want to explain Git branches to the art department. Yeah, to a non-technical user, it was a disaster. I know. Git. This is the reason I use VS Code for beginners, because it has Git built in. rsync for transferring files. SSH and Delta Diff. Yeah. Well, Raritan, that's awesome, but that's not anything like what a non-technical person could do. Not the bad. I used it before Git. Git LFS makes it reasonable to use large binary files to an extent. That's what I was hinting at, but it still doesn't get you away from using branching and stuff and explaining all that to an art person, right? So I'm digging on this new perspective here. The bigger the file, the bigger the quality, right? Yep. Well, yeah, but the point of it is what business does a big high quality design image have doing in a web repo or a web whatever site? It doesn't. So there's got to be a conversion taking place. So unless you're we're getting ahead of ourselves here, unless you're talking about some sort of downsampling image of the main image to generate your website as a part of the build process, which is way beyond beginner scope, than just getting the image to where it needs to be. I mean, medium-sized raster files are not big at all. They can easily go into most sites. Although I will say there is a max size on a Git repo, and that's something to consider. So there's something to be said for that. Show of hands. I do enjoy Git for as a way of do versioning though. Yeah, for the CSS and all that stuff. We're talking about Brave. We're not talking about browsers. I don't want to talk about it. I just ignore non-technical people. JK, I know. I probably did too much to myself. My wife's capable of technical things, but prefers not to. We don't get to ask for specific file sizes halfway through the project. We ask for the originals and do it with right sizes needed. Well, that makes sense. And that would be reminiscent of my experience with the Nike team. When I was on the Nike team and I had to deal with the Nike design team, and they had no concept of sizes. They gave me these big, glorious mock-ups of what the page was going to look like. And like, you want me to fill the entire page with this image in 1998? And I was like, this is going to take 20 minutes to load or no, and they sent me the big things, by the way, and I don't even remember how I got them. I honestly don't. But I hear you guys' points here. And a big part of this first part of the book is interfacing with other departments. And so I'm going to correct myself on that point. I think WinSCP and FileZilla and having a intermediary data store for large files that are not in any Git repo is probably going to be a part of most modern teams. But that's not how I make websites. But I can see how that would be as a part of a larger team, particularly a graphics design team. They would be able to parse XML with JavaScript. Nope. Discussion is how to transfer files. Yep, because that's what we're doing. Yeah. This is a beginner stream, Sir Wuzzle. We can definitely help you with that, but not right now. Didn't read my text. It was generally about privacy, not Brave. Right. You really only should use Git and SCP servers, of course. And that's important, right? You should not be using anything but SCP, SFTP, and Git. I think that goes without saying. But we're saying, again, what are we on here? Any more? I want to go back to the book. Most Tor exit nodes. Yes, that's irrelevant. I'm a Graybird. How's it going, Name Random TV? Oh gosh, 3 years ago from a junior medium. Do you reckon it'd be a good move to just, out of 7 projects I maintain, to just move companies? Not the right time to ask that question. Please stay tuned and we'll go forward. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, midnight to 4 are for beginners. So we're doing the beginner boost right now. Welcome, Name Random TV, to the stream though. Love to answer that question at a different time. Okay. What should I start with parsing XML and JavaScript? Another great question for another time. All right, I'm going to turn back to the book. Just once again, to reminder to the big people, these new people, big people who have just come here. This is a beginner stream. We're covering Learning Web Design, the book. We're trying to go through the book as we can, and this is a video that will be saved and produced and published on Vimeo. And you're welcome to stay here and discuss things, but the priority is to enable beginners to do their thing. If you want to come back at any other time when I stream, which is pretty much all the time, I'm happy to answer any of those questions that I can get to. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to the book. So after that lively discussion, I am now a big fan of WinSCP and FileZilla, and I used it. CyberDuck was a Mac thing when I used it, but I guess it's a Windows thing as well. I'm not familiar with this one at all, but WinSCP and FileZilla apparently are real things still. FileZilla is the only one I've actually used regularly. So good tools to know. Terminal is obviously a tool you need to know, and we're not going to cover in chapter 20. We'll cover it as much as she does, but I really encourage you to come back and cover this topic with me when we cover the rest of this stuff as part of the beginner boost. And if you want to know where to get that, rwx.gg/boost. And this will be the list of stuff we're going to be covering. We're doing this one right now. Learning Progressive Web Design. Actually, that's just web design, not that. And we're going to be doing Pandoc and then the JavaScript way and the Linux command line. And at that time, we're going to be doing all things terminal, Linux terminal specifically. So that's coming. So I just want to let you know. Okay, let's keep going. Cygwin. I don't recommend Cygwin to anyone. This is really old. There's still people who use it, but no. Not now, not today. And WSL2 is really the new norm. There's many good things that came out of Cygwin, but that's old tech. Nobody uses it. You can get a good terminal on everything these days. It's not just Mac OS, by the way. This is also Windows now has a really kick butt terminal. Windows now also has a great terminal. So terminal is the future. You should learn it, love it, because cloud doesn't have a fancy graphic UI and everything's cloud. You want to SSH, you want to connect to your refrigerator or your toaster to check it out or something. You're going to be using SSH for that kind of thing. You're not going to be, ever using a graphic terminal for that. So learning a terminal is really important for lots of people. All right, so we are done with this first part of the first chapter. The first chapter of the first part. And it says here, I hope you learned some stuff about the umbrella of web design, what it's about. I think she did a pretty good job of giving us an overview. Now that you're done, what are your goals in web design? Where do you want to go with this? I don't mind telling you that the goal of these boosts is to just get you your minimum available so that then you can decide what you want to do after that. And then if you want to go deeper in front-end web design or web engineering, you can do that back in engineering. What are your current skills? This is all stuff I covered in Autodidactic Habits of Successful Technologists, and it's a previous series, and so you can watch that if you want. we'll also be covering some of that in Good to Gig. Getting started making web pages. You'll be able to create simple pages by the time you're done reading this book. But from there, you can continue adding to your bag of tricks. We're going to skip all these tests. You can just do these on your own. I think these are kind of funny, actually. They're not really relevant, and we're just going to skip them. How the web works. Chapter 2. Any new comments before I go back to Chapter 2 that are relevant? I don't like WSL. It doesn't feel very good. Well, it's better than the alternative. Cygwin is a massive download, and it's not tied to the. If you use WSL2, you can actually edit and move files around that are where you would expect them to be. Yeah. There's right. Terminal is the past, present, future. I completely agree. C programming fanboy. Me too. I don't know why they don't include a compiler. We're not talking about C right now. Spending days configuring WSL2, I realized just to go use the real deal. Yeah, me too. In fact, rather than using WSL2, I would almost rather pay $5 a month and just pay for a cloud server, and that's my new preference. If you are a true terminal user, you can just pay your $5 a month for DigitalOcean, and you can just SSH into your server anywhere, anytime, and even sample test things and stuff like that, and just use whatever SSH or PuTTY to connect into it. So that's what I'm starting to recommend more to people if they don't want to mess around locally with. But those who do, WSL2 is easier than installing a VM and running Pop! OS usually, or just running Linux. But people don't want to give up their games, so they don't. And then they try to dual boot with Pop! OS and they lose their Windows partition. Yeah, that's why I don't ever recommend dual booting in any way. I've done it a lot, and I have machines right there that do it, but it's always dangerous. All right. So again, if you don't understand anything from the chat, it's because I'm trying to address the chat. Don't feel like you have to understand it all. It's always been there and it will be there. Yes, I look for it, but it's too basic. They must be JS frameworks for more advanced stuff, jQuery or something like that. Yes, there are lots. Vue is my favorite. Never jQuery. jQuery, we were just talking about people bag on jQuery. jQuery still has some valuable things, but you're right, it is kind of out of date these days. The thing about jQuery that I love is that it doesn't require a whole, compilation framework for JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript can do most of the jQuery stuff. I agree. No, just go with Vue, not React. Don't do React. Do Vue. .NET is Windows' answer to that. Windows is focused on desktop stuff. Might be true. Where can I find your autodidactic series? If you go back in my VODs or on my YouTube series, it's really raw. It hasn't been edited yet, but just look for autodidactic. It would be on a Friday or Saturday night. Yep, and it's both on YouTube and it's on Twitch. If you want to go back and find that, it's about 8 hours of content on that. That's the first series that we're doing. Make sure you lock it down and use SSH keys. Yes, Konieczna, of course. I was going to say that in Russian. Another AD for Pop! OS, of course. Haha, Clementino. He really likes to push it. No harm in it. Yeah, I just because it's so happy, it makes me so happy, and I like sharing things that make me happy, particularly for beginners. If it means that you're going to run Linux. For the beginners who actually have the courage to give it a try and kick Windows out and put Pop! OS on there, yeah, I want that. So yeah, you betcha I'm advertising for them. I use WSL2 daily. But in case of hardware accessibility or networking, I switch to dual boot Linux. Yep, it does the job. I agree. And I've done that in the past too. My area, you either know React or you can forget about finding a job at front end. That's not at all true. I can objectively prove that to be false so easily. No, there are so many jobs in front end that have nothing to do with React. And there are a lot of really good React jobs. Just do a search for Vue jobs. And we'll see the overwhelming numbers of people who actually prefer Vue over React. React is the leader by far right now, but it is. You don't have to learn it, and it's an abysmal technology that should never have existed. I hate it with a passion, a deep passion, and I believe it's killing the web. Yeah, in Russia, by the way. Yep. And on a website, I'm on React only. Probably true. That makes sense. I think Russians would love React more than Vue because they over-engineer shit all the time. Whoops, I swore. It's like my one swear word. Sorry. I'll have to bleep that one out. JS frameworks come and go every 3 years. Yes, they do. Vue is almost as old as React, and Vue is based on Angular, by the way. All right, so this has moved away from a useful topic, so I'm going to go back to the book with my last half hour here. And we're going to do this. We're going to make it through this. How the web works. In fact, you know what? No, we're not. We're going to actually cut it right here. I'm going to be done for tonight. Just because I have the energy to go for another chapter, but this is a big one. So this chapter that we're going to go through is going to cover how the internet works, what the web is, and what networking is. So when I come back, and that'll be tomorrow night or tonight, whatever you want to call it. Again, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, midnight to 4, we're going to cover this stuff. So when we pick up, we'll pick up with chapter 2, and this is going to cover networking and the web and where it came from and all of that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and put a mark on this for the end, and I'll take questions for anybody about anything. Twitch mark end. All right. So that should get us that thing. Networking is the fun part, and I don't really want to rush through it at the end here. It's really important we cover that well. So I want to be really fresh when we cover it. I can't link to the PDF. No, it would be you can definitely find the PDF online someplace. This is not yes. Do I teach stuff on schools? Yes, I do. I've taught at college. I taught in college, and I taught at a private school. And I have a business doing private mentoring on this kind of stuff as well. I can't tell you what the PDF is called because I renamed it. So the name of the book that we're covering is as I said, it's in the title, Learning Web Design. So, hey, what happened? Why don't I resize anymore? It's interesting. I think I broke my. Yeah, I did. All right. I'm going to go ahead and probably can the stream for now. And I'm going to see you guys. You like to listen? Angular and React are greater than Vue? No, that's a fail. It's a horrible. I can objectively prove that wrong on so many levels. Do you know what progressive design is? Progressive enhancement. Yeah, React doesn't know about it. Neither does Angular. Yep, that's why Vue was created. The guy who created Angular, or who was on the Angular team, created Vue because Angular's messed up. Yep. Yeah. We can fight about web frameworks all night. It'll be really fun. I don't have anything personal against you, right? Even if I think Angular and React is abysmal. React is fine. It's not great. It's just fine. It's hacky as hell. It's not just hacky. It renders websites impossible to search. Don't give me the shit about hydration. Time for me to go to bed. Guys, thank you so much for coming in and being a part of the audience. And I think we've covered everything that we're going to do for tonight. And this is going to wrap up this session, and I'm going to do another one later. And if I stream anything tomorrow, it'll be a whatever stream, which is just me being really, 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 really crazy. Okay. Yes. Love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Just hipster. No, I'm not hipster. No. We use Ching Chong technology. God. I'm glad we're closing the stream down now. Good night. Hey, YouTubers. Good night. Yes, I can skate. What are we talking about? Just not orange. Why am I orange today? I am orange. What is going on with that? I thought it was not appropriate too. Yeah. All hipsters can skate. You know what? I think I might actually be that color. I don't even know. We'll go see. Good night.